recognized symbol of excellence in sports entertainment.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to My World. And of course, we couldn't do it without the Hall of Famer, your friend and mine, the greatest professional wrestler of all time, Double J, Jeff Jarrett. Jeff, how are you, man?
Oh, Conrad Thompson. Good day to you, my friend. I'll just get it right out front. A little nasal tone. Still got a little drainage from last week, but good workouts this morning. Good workouts over the weekend. Big week in front of us. What a crazy football weekend. We won't bore too many people, but I'll just say right off the bat that a practice squad kicker got a W yesterday. I'll just move on through that. But no, full gear weekend. And as a basketball junkie myself, anytime I get to step inside the LA Forum, home of Showtime, is always very special. So, no, a lot going on. Shoot, Conrad. Video game, baseball. Anyway, what you got?
How many times have you wrestled at the Forum?
Oh, boy. I remember WWF 90. Here you go. Get out that Google machine.
Bret Hart, January 15th, 1994.
Okay, think about this. We're going to go back into my world, my time. 1994. Not real far removed from Lakers Celtics, and a young Double J. What was the date of that?
January 1994.
Okay, the Double J vignettes started in October of 93, fresh off of Brother Love doing his magical work. But no, and that was, if not my first kind of Double J house show run, it was right up there at the very beginning, because I didn't really start on the road until I think the last week of December, early January, something along those lines. But yeah, I think we did on that run, San Francisco, Honolulu, LA, and San Diego. And when I saw the Forum on the old paper booking sheet, again, the home of Magic Johnson and Showtime and the Lakers Celtics, and it was very cool. Now it's been refurbished and the remodel and all the upgrades. It is a really, really cool venue, and it will be rocking this Saturday night. I can assure you that.
What's interesting is your show where you were just talking about January 15th, 1994. That's the WWE return after a 9-year absence. So they hadn't been there since 85, and their first show back, there you are. Being a basketball junkie, I know that was a big deal. I actually talked about this with Tony Schiavone recently, that the Forum is probably like the West Coast equivalent of Madison Square Garden.
Oh,
like the most iconic venue, right?
Well, and what was cool, coming from the South, Conrad, and I was just a young man. But when you really think about the size of the LA market, there were the LA Sports Arena, and this time Anaheim, the Pond. I don't know what the building's called now, but it was, it was just coming on the scene, and events and live events at WWF really wanted to make a focus. And in a lot of ways, the Pond kind of was their new home, but Sports Arena did, a lot of tapings back in the day. But to get the opportunity to step back in, it's a quick jaunt from the airport as well, from LAX. But that building has so much history going back years and years. But look, it's iconic. The musical acts that, well, you said it. It's the MSG of the West Coast. The history of that venue, and again, the Showtime, it was so much more than basketball on the West Coast. It was pop culture. It was that hybrid of, dare I say, the sport entertainment situation, Dr. Buss, and just kind of how they, and man, the players, and I say players, not just on the court, but off the court, the roster. I mean, Magic and Kareem and Pat Riley, the coach, just they're iconic. And it, in a lot of ways, it launched the league, West Coast, East Coast. Bird in the East Coast and the Celtics, and look, you obviously my Sixer fans and Knick fans are going to be upset, but it was such a defined rivalry of hard-nosed basketball in the East and Showtime on the West, and it really took the sports world, as far as a television property, it took it to a whole nother level. Without that, the NBA wouldn't be where they are today. And you kind of look at Boston Garden, no air conditioning, that had so much personality, but the flash of the Forum was, man, iconic in so many ways. So yeah, as a 25, 26-year-old man, for me to get to wrestle Brett, who was on top, it was cool. It was cool, Connie, without question.
I'll tell you what else was cool. This past weekend, I found myself flipping through the channels, and man, if I love anything more than college football, it's being right. And it turns out not only was I right that Alabama routed Kentucky, I was also right that those Tigers from Missouri, a lot of chatter.
Check. Marcus, are you having audio? I got audio issues.
A lot of problems on the field in Missouri for the Tennessee Volunteers, as the hapless Volunteers scored 0 points in the first quarter. They managed to pull it together, score 7 points in the second quarter, and that's all she wrote. They forfeited at halftime, 0 points on the board in the third quarter, 0 points on the board in the fourth quarter. Meanwhile, the Missouri Tigers ran up 36 points. It wasn't even close, Jeff. Tennessee was a favorite, and Tennessee lost by 29 points. Is this the most embarrassed you've been this season as a Tennessee Volunteer fan?
Check. Marcus, are you having audio issues? So, have we talked about Sunday football yet?
What AEWTIX.com is where you can get your tickets.
I'm kidding. I'll give you embarrassing.
It was bad.
Absolutely, man. Twitter. I don't know. You probably don't follow the same folks I do because you're knee deep into that Crimson Tide. But when you go into Rocky Top, but man, they were out for I'll say, Coach Josh and his road lack of ability to win on the road. That was just. It wasn't even the same team out there. It was ugly. I'll just say it was really ugly, and it put us in a driver's seat for that second tier, maybe third tier bowl. I'll give it to you, Conrad. But you know what? I was working out this morning with my man Corey, and we were going back and forth. We get little like 30-second conversations in between sets. Conrad, I'd love to hear your perspective of this. Vols aren't as bad as we played. We got shellacked, but
you lost to a 3-4 Florida team.
Shut up. What do we have to lose playing against the Dogs? I mean, nothing.
Listen, I'm still pulling for y'all, and I'll be honest.
We could be dangerous if the Dogs get a little overconfident, because they're locked horns on the day that they got you guys.
I think everybody assumes at this point it's going to come down to Alabama and Tennessee on the SEC side of things. And then I think for the rest of the country, it's probably going to be Ohio State and Michigan that has the most interest. And then somewhere along the way, Washington will bumble into getting destroyed, and so will FSU. But the real national championship will be the winners of Ohio State and Michigan taking on the winners of Georgia and Alabama. But I am like you. I'm pulling for the Tennessee Volunteers to pull the upset, because there's been times where Tennessee looked really, really good this year. It just happened to not be this past Saturday against the Missouri Tigers.
Bad. That's an upgrade, as Dutch Mantel would say. We didn't even look that good.
We should mention that we talked a lot about the Great Western Forum to start today's show. I guess these days it's called the Kia Forum.
Yep.
But that is the reason we're talking about it, of course, is because that is where you guys are going to be this Friday and Saturday. Come see AEW live. They always deliver on pay-per-view. It is going to be incredible. AEWTIX.com. It is a stacked, loaded card, and the entire industry is abuzz about who is the devil. Anyone listening to this podcast knows the answer is the Last Outlaw. Now, we don't normally do spoilers here on the program, but the devil will reveal himself. He'll probably come out holding up a sign that says they're here or we're here or something like that. But he's here. He did this whole angle in AAA where there was a guy under a hood. Like, nobody's even paying attention. It's clearly you. And I personally am excited and a little disappointed in my friend because I thought we were close enough that you would have given me a heads up. But you didn't give me a heads up when you were going to become the Texas Chainsaw Death Massacre match champion. You didn't give me a heads up that hardware was coming home to Hendersonville. I would hope, since you're clearly going to walk out on Saturday night, Sunday morning, our time, and become the AEW new world champion. I thought you would have given me a heads up because the devil is returning on pay-per-view. Jeff Jarrett is your new AEW champion. It's not a spoiler. I mean, it's not a prediction. It's a spoiler.
It's a spoiler. Get it right, Heyman. Oh, boy.
Right.
Intriguing, huh?
Yeah, dude. I didn't see you doing the devil thing. You know, we've been pretty honest about talking about your walk with the Lord here on the show and your recovery and what a big part it's played. And now you're doing a devil character on TV. Are the people at church going to be disappointed in you?
Oh, Conrad.
I know you're getting the red eye home. But as soon as you get out of church, just so you know, me and Cassie are going to meet you at the Chop House because we want to see that AEW World Title up close.
Okay. Who's ordering the appetizers?
Well, we know it'll be you, and we'll just say, give us the left side of the menu here. That's the Jeff Jarrett way of ordering there. He just says, we'll have the left side.
Hey, Conrad, Cassie,
yes,
y'all gonna
finish this. So anyways, let's talk about why we're here today. We are going to have a lot of fun talking about.
Wait. Just because the more and more feedback online and that one tweet that the guy put out yesterday when CJ Stroud and had the big victory and all that. For the record, folks, just as an update, I just think today, and we're going to make it very concise because we've got a cool topic and everything that goes with it. But Conrad, do you mind? Because we like to give the highest paid, and that's why, look, if we're going to talk, we're talking about the highest paid player in the league and whether he's worth the return on investment and everything that goes with that. Joey, clipboard Joey Burrow, because he's going to be holding a clipboard before his career is all said and done.
An average salary, Jeff, of $55 million per year.
55 million per year. But what started all of this?
Yes.
Because I think a lot of times people lose sight of, now, why do y'all want to give Joe Park or Chris Park or the Monster Abyss? Why do y'all give him such a hard time?
Because we can.
Well, we can. But can you just go back in time that just kind of lit the whole, it's the one match that was thrown on all of this. And that's why, because I just think we need to kind of set the table on why it's a weekly just pounding of Abyss. What comment did he make with a straight face in the middle of producing Boogs?
He said in a loud and clear voice,
yes,
Joe Burrow is the next Joe Montana.
Yes.
And I said to myself, he's got to be working a gimmick. That can't be real.
Oh boy.
Because here's the thing too. I just pulled this up just for funsies. I think we can all agree that there is a list of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history. Somewhere on that list are a list of names, guys like Dan Marino, but he never won the big one. Roger Staubach, and well, maybe that's a little old school. In the more modern era, people would certainly throw in names like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning. And if you had a black and white TV, maybe you might say Johnny Unitas. And if you can overlook a little bit of fraud here and there and way too many interceptions, maybe you were a Brett Favre guy. But Joe Montana, to a lot of people, is the gold standard of a great championship winning NFL quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned a minute ago that Joe Burrow has a 5-year, $275 million contract just on this contract, which is $55 million per year. That's his average salary. Do you want to guess what the career earnings of Joe Montana in the NFL were? The whole career combined, Jeff. All the seasons.
100 million.
25.
Half
of what he made this year. Joe Montana in his entire career combined collectively 25 million. Joe Burrow in one season, 55 million. And what does it get you? It gets you 5-4. It gets you 2 interceptions against the goddamn Texans. That's what it gets.
Oh, who won that game? Texans, Bengals.
The Texans. I mean, can you imagine a scenario?
In Texas, right? Nope. They were playing in Cincinnati.
It's like I mean, I've never seen somebody choke this hard. I'm not talking about Burrow. I'm talking about Abyss, because every week he's lighting our phone up with all these excuses and, oh, well, this guy sucks too. It's like, wait. What are you talking about? We never compared that guy to Joe Montana.
Exactly. Stay focused on the reality.
Montana? Montana, bro. Listen, if you wanted to say, man, he's the next Phillip Rivers. All right. We'll give you that. Man, if Joe Burrow keeps his head down and his nose clean, he could be the next Matt Ryan. You're damn right he could. He 100% could. And don't let Rich Gannon come around here talking shit neither. Joe Burrow's here. But don't you disrespect the good damn name of Joe Montana.
Amen. Well said. Well, that's the way you get things started.
I'm just saying. By the way, if you would like to go see the Bengals lose up close and in person with a great seat, because you can get great deals on Bengals tickets right now. Let me just give you a spoiler.
5-4, baby.
You don't even have to buy them in advance. You can get them at the last possible minute and get a great deal thanks to our friends at Game Time. You never have to worry with Game Time. They got you covered for sports, music, comedy, and theater. And I have loved using Game Time. I think I've told the story before. Man, I got to do the ultimate dad deal not too long ago. My daughter wanted tickets to a concert the same night. Dad, can you help me get tickets to this show? Sure I can, honey. When is it? Tonight? It's like 3:00 in the afternoon when I get this text. Fast forward, she walks into the venue and cannot believe Dad got her front row center. And I did it all thanks to Game Time. And by the way, if I'd have let her buy her tickets on her own, she would have been on the last possible row. Well, for $20 more, she was front row. All thanks to Game Time. I felt like the ultimate dad that day, and you can too. Get the peace of mind of knowing you're going to get the best deal with something they call the Game Time Guarantee. Here's how it works. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less money, Game Time credits you 110% of the difference. Now, if they credit you 100% of the difference, it meant you got the best deal. They're going to credit you 110%. They want to beat the best deal. That's the peace of mind you can count on with Game Time. Not only that, they eliminate the guesswork. We've all seen a seat map and wondered to ourselves, self, is that a good seat? They give you your perspective view from your seat. You'll know exactly what to expect when you show up. I love the Game Time app. It made me look like a hero. It'll do the same for you. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets and download the Game Time app. Create an account and use our code MyWorld. You'll save $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code MyWorld. That's MYWORLD for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So
real quick on the Game Time. Oh boy, I'm getting awesome feedback. This ain't no plug or nothing like that. I've turned this on to actually a lot of folks. I'll get hit up. Hey, do you know anybody in Oak City? We're going to, or you name a town. I've turned some folks onto this. Folks, download it. If you're an event goer, get it. It's that simple.
You're going to love it. Seriously. Like, that is a real story. I paid, I think, $27 more. And my daughter, Kansas, went from the last row at Lana Del Rey, where her back's against the concrete, tippy top of the venue, to front row center. It cost me $27 more.
Yeah.
Like, it is a game changer. It's a Game Time app. Do it right now. And what's great is you don't have to worry about, oh, well, that's been sold out forever. Not on Game Time.
Nope.
You can get it the day of. I downloaded the tickets into my phone at 3 p.m., transferred them over to her. 4 hours later, she's front row. You can't beat it.
Yeah, very cool.
Hey, so listen, we've had a lot of fun. We're talking about AEW. They got a big dunk and shoot over at Inglewood High School. I think you're going to be there.
I'm winning that, just for the record.
Here's what I'm concerned about. You know, there was a graphic that was out once upon a time that had the Nature Boy Ric Flair on it. The graphic that they just threw up there, we'll have Marcus put it up there again. He's not on this one. And I really hope he's not there, because if you murder him in a school, like, that's less than ideal. I think there's paperwork involved if there's blood spilled and loss of life at a school. I think it's a whole big thing. But seriously, you can still participate. It's for a great cause. Tickets are on sale now. AEWtogether.org. I'm looking forward to you being out there, though. I mean, you got Satnam Singh, and that's another question. I could see you getting Sanjay all black hooded up, and you could get Jay Lethal all black hooded up. But when you guys are beating people up, when you're dressed up like the devil doing your cosplay Jones deal that you're doing, where's Satnam? Is he driving the getaway car? Because it's kind of hard to hide his identity when he's taller than everybody in the zip code.
Conrad, the day we had the press conference, right?
Mm-hmm.
When I did the attempted murder on family members,
stabbed him in the head with a high heel shoe.
Did I tell you all of my trade secrets that day?
You did not. You did not.
Okay, so I'm not going to tell you where I got Satnam.
Okay. Well, I'll be watching this weekend. You should be too. It's going to be on pay-per-view. I encourage you to check it out. Listen, I know that there's a lot of criticism about all modern wrestling in every form. One thing that's usually not debated, and I don't think will be debated this weekend, AEW delivers on pay-per-view. So let's watch Alabama roll Tide and beat Chattanooga somehow, some way. And then later that
evening. I hate these late season rolls.
It's a waste of time, dude.
It really is, but that'll change. One other thing, because look, I know everybody doesn't really like the
college football chatter.
Yes, but you have not caught up on this. So this is my world and picking about. What do you think about the Michigan Harbaugh courts getting involved, sitting him on the bench, the post-game interview of the coach, just kind of all that drama? What do you think?
Stupid.
Yeah. Okay.
Like, listen, signal stealing. How about change them up, asshole? Like, what?
That's why it's like, what world are we living in? But
what are you talking about? Like, you should have known. What? I get if this was Pee Wee football, that's party foul. We're trying to teach kids. We got millions of dollars on the line in every game, and you're all willy-nilly doing the same shit this season you did. Like, what are you doing? Like, I'm an advocate for let's cut the microphones on like they do in the NFL. And I mean, you got to monitor it. I get that. Just deliver the play to the quarterback in his helmet and then cut it off.
Ridiculous. And then one other thing. What a world we live in. Hey, Jimbo Fisher, I'm going to show you, pal. And I'm not joking around here. You're fired. You are absolutely fired. You are not stepping on the sideline at Texas A&M. And oh, by the way, we're going to pay you $76 million for the next 8 years.
Even if you get another job. And normally, Jeff, as you know, when they go get another job, if it's for less money, the original school has to offset the income loss. That does not exist here. Jimbo can go coach somewhere else, make $20 million a year or whatever the hell he wants there, and then continue to pocket the $76 million there. Like, I wish that this existed in wrestling and wrestling podcasts and mortgages. I want someone to send my ass home and give me $76 million to be there.
I just got to give his agent a standing ovation.
It's the greatest contract in the history of coaching.
It's unbelievable. So international fans, we apologize and non-college. Okay. So, but man,
the name of the show is My World.
Okay.
We're going to talk about what you want to talk about.
Yeah, but it's yeah. Well, and I'll just end it on this. My man Coaster, boy, was he strutting around yesterday because these Steelers beat the Packers. And good family fun in this house yesterday.
Is beating the Steelers a big deal now?
The Steelers, surprisingly, 6-3 record. They're.
I meant the Packers. I'm saying without Aaron Rodgers, is beating the Packers even a thing anymore?
What about Rodgers walking around, Achilles tear? He's up throwing the ball. Anyway, modern medicine. Okay, topic today, my man. Topic today.
Our topic today is something, well, you don't want to talk about. Maybe we're going to be talking about when your time in TNA came to an end back in 2017. We've discussed Slammiversary 2017 and how big and important and special of a show that was to Jeff. I encourage you to check that out in the archives at myworldpod.com. But on June 28th, it's announced, this is back in 2017, that Anthem was in agreement to purchase Global Force Wrestling. I believe this was always part of the plan, right?
Yeah, and just timing wise, and we've covered Slammiversary. That's 15 because I'm looking over here to my right. Yeah, I've still got the turnbuckle pad signed and go back in the archives if you want a kind of a shoulder for this episode. But that was, from a professional point of view, Conrad, one of my most enjoyable events. In so many ways. Got there in late December. 2016, early 17 was the first TV. So we really had 6 months to do what we could do to kind of get things up and running. And there's obviously at the old stomping grounds, the Impact Zone in Orlando. I say this respectfully. Was it a big gross like we talk about? No, but we turned people away. It was a big momentum shift, and I thought the event, Robert Flores and Don West did an amazing job. Never worked together before. They were the play-by-play and color commentator, and Abyss and Jeremy Borash and Scott Steiner and Josh Matthews had a unique story build, and Alberto and Aldis, and I mean LAX, and just the card kind of top to bottom. Everybody worked their butt off. It really just came together and hit to me on all cylinders. I mean, it was a great launching event, if you will. I did my part to screw things up, as we'll kind of get into it. And we've covered this multiple different ways, but my personal situation, and again, I'll take full responsibility. I didn't, I wasn't in a good headspace, to say the least, and we'll get into that. But Conrad, this press release that you're talking about was really the first public made statement. All these terms had been agreed to really in December, early January, because this is the Global Force and Impact and Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions. That was the kind of the parent company that Anthem Sports and Entertainment created. But it was a press release to kind of, and very much storyline. Yes, there's a lot of validity and truth, and it was a statement put out, but it was also, the timing of it was for creative purposes, that we've merged the two companies, because it was Impact title versus Global Force title all the way through. So we were kind of merging everything, and this was our jumping off point. But the statement, I remember, I don't know exactly where I was, but I was about to get on the airplane, and they were wanting to dot the I's and cross the T's, and they, as in Anthem out of Toronto, and we were just putting the release together and what we were going to put out, but it was leading into Slammiversary weekend.
It's an interesting story that's going to continue to get a little more interesting. You're announced as a member of Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, not AEW, but AWE, the parent company of Impact Wrestling. You're also going to be a member of their board, an equity owner, and chief creative officer. What were your responsibilities in all of this, Jeff?
Talent, creative, and production. I mean, in real broad strokes. That was
all right. Let's run through that. Talent, creative, and production. So that's basically everything in wrestling, right?
Legal, finance, administration. There's marketing, network. There's a lot more, but you could almost say wrestling operations, if that makes sense. And when I say production, look, that was a team that, you hired and everything, but just kind of, again, man, Conrad, and these were, so we'll kind of say June of 2017. I think I've stated on here, probably April, maybe even March, is when I began to see, so early in the relationship, that, okay, this budget is much tighter than I thought it was going to be in December, January. It was, because we're talking about, we're going to go to Orlando and shoot 6 2-hour episodes, or I don't know exactly what it does. We'll bring it out here in a minute, but it was it was a challenge creating the content, but that was where I was like involved on the production side.
You mentioned the budget. We've never really talked about that before. Can you sort of break down how budgeting for a wrestling show, and at least in your mind, in that era, would work?
Well, you kind of have to figure out what you're willing, and I say pronouns, pal, what Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions was wanting to pay per episode. And so when you look at it from a per episode basis, and let's just for round numbers, oh boy, Conrad, I don't even, I think $100 per episode, if you're just saying that, well, then, you kind of have to look at, okay, Conrad, you caught me off guard here, but so me trying to explain this, what you kind of have to do is then extrapolate out and say, what is my budget for the year? And in total production budget, what do you want to spend? In their defense, but I'm also convicting them, they hadn't thought that through and hadn't really given a number on, this is what we want to spend over the next 12 months. So we were ebbing and flowing here. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to spend per episode? Well, what do you think we need to spend? I said, well, that's really not going to get us where we need to be, is because if you produce, let's just say 4 episodes, 2 hours in a night, and come back the next night, 2 hours in a night. So then you have your 4 episodes. From a creative perspective, that's doable. Is it challenging? Yes, because you're asking your top stars to go out twice a night if they're on every episode. And then if you work 2 days of taping, all right, let's turn that into 4 days of taping. So then you get 8 2-hour episodes in 4 days. And then if you do even more, you get 12 episodes in 6 days. How you kind of break it down, you just kind of have to do the math, but it gets more and more challenging from a creative perspective and a talent perspective, because you're asking guys to work twice in one night, or sometimes a pre-tape, but also your audience is going to see the same talent. So it gets to be a ebb and flow in a matrix. Obviously, best case scenario, you had unlimited funds, you do 1 live hour a show a night. Live is spontaneous. There's a sense of energy. Look, I knew we weren't in that stratosphere, but in the TNA days, we were doing basically 3 episodes in 2 days, an episode and a half per night. And that keeps your audience fresh. But budgeting, you kind of have to have a number for the year, and that's done off TV contracts. All right, I'm creating, or there is this much revenue that the content is going to generate. So you've got X amount of dollars that you're generating, and obviously you want some profit, and you got to run this, and you got to pay your back end and administrative and finance and insurance and legal and salaries and employees and all the different times. But you kind of have to have that number of total revenue, and then back out of it, what can you afford? Well, when you're in a deficit or a startup, or like in this case, Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions had acquired, and I'll get maybe the names wrong, but I think it was TNA Ventures, which was created in 2014, because it went from TNA Entertainment, and then the Carter family said, they're selling out, and it was all under Dixie, and I think it was TNA Ventures, if you will. Well, that's what Anthem acquired, and so now, and I know there's the Corgan years and all that kind of stuff in there, but they had to identify a certain amount of dollars, and that's how we were going to do it on per episode production budget. Conrad, I rambled. Did any of that make sense to you?
Yeah, listen, I just wanted everybody to understand that, budgeting is a real thing. And I appreciated even when you said, hey, let's break it down, from a per episode standpoint, because that effectively is what they're paying for. They're trying to create these blocks of content, whether it's a 1 hour show or a 2 hour show. And then they're going to monetize those, of course, in the first run on television. They're going to monetize it on social media. And then they've got that archival content that they can monetize internationally and with collections and streaming and all kinds of other stuff. But it boils down to, what are they willing to invest per episode? Because you don't know, as the guy who's booking talent and booking venues, hey, what is the plan to monetize this beyond what the ticket sales are? Certainly that would factor into the actual live event, but a lot of times these shows are happening, and I don't think a lot of people really understand this, but just the quick and dirty, every time AEW or WWE run a show, unless it is a big house for a special event like a pay-per-view, they are running that show at a loss for the local event. they are making an investment in that market and hoping to make their money up on the television side of things. But it's not like you can get all the travel there, all the talent there, all the insurance, all the hotel, all the airfare, all the other expenses that are associated for the crew and all the rigging and the screens and da 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 da, and break even on a lot of these shows. You've got to actually have either a television rights deal, or we're selling airtime, or we're selling ads, or there's another strategy at play. But if you remove what that is and you're hoping that just the ticket sales cover you like an indie show, that's not always the case, right?
Yeah. And you know what? It's a fascinating time. Glad you brought that up, because when you have a television contract, look, and there's lots of addendums and ins and outs, but you're paying per hour. You kind of look at whether it's cable or broadcast, and broadcast pays more than cable, and then streaming and everything that goes with it. But you kind of know your rights fees and what that's going to come in. When you're a touring show like a Dynamite, like a Collision, like a SmackDown, like a Raw, those rights fees are, your kind of your weekly nut that comes in. And the live event gate, on a great house, it's, you got to pay venue, but it doesn't cut like you. I'm kind of reiterating what you say. It's paying. It's not carrying the thing, but the rights fees do, and that's where it can get super in professional wrestling. Very profitable. You look, stay in my world, go back to the TNA days. We were at a studio, so the ups and downs, and I'm saying production and flying everybody into Orlando, our fixed cost made us much more profitable quickly once we kind of turned the corner. You just look at the recently situation, which I think is fascinating, and I think it's great for the wrestling industry. NXT, to my knowledge, they haven't made it public. Conrad, you may know more than I do, but if that's a studio show getting the kind of numbers that they're talking about in a fixed cost, that is wildly profitable, which is impressive, very, very impressive. And the numbers that it's drawing. So the business, and I say the business as a whole, across the board, professional wrestling is, to me, I don't think I've ever worked a day in my life. I love it. Done right and really dialed in on creating compelling content is a profit center. And the thing that I was going to kind of elaborate on, Conrad, and I'll just use, I think the simple term would be a WWE set of circumstances. They produce Monday Night Raw. They've got massive production cost and everything we just kind of talked about, but their rights fees more than cover it. And, whether it's a half a house or a third of a house or 90% or 100%. Okay. So there's more revenue. What's kind of fantastic is that 3-hour Raw, we'll call it, when it airs in India, where are the incremental costs?
Right.
They don't exist other than transmission and some marketing. I mean, there are some, it's not, but for
negligible.
Yes. That's why creating content on a global platform, it's a fantastic business model. And, at the end of the day, Ari Emanuel and TKO and Endeavor, they looked at that. They looked at that. And when you kind of look at UFC creating content and professional wrestling, or MMA creating content and professional wrestling creating content, I'll go with professional wrestling just because of the amount we can create.
So we've established that you're running the chief creative officer position, AKA you're handling talent and you're handling creative. So you're a big part of what's happening here. The press release says, we're excited by the progress we've made with Impact Wrestling since acquiring the business in January. Jeff and his team have been instrumental in this success, and we are pleased that we have reached an agreement on the basis of which we can combine our businesses to continue to grow. Slammiversary 15 will be a fitting occasion to bring the promotions together and merge the titles under the new Impact combined belts. By combining our resources and talent, we can produce the best product for our global audience. So that was the goal at Slammiversary, which you can hear about in the archives. But you're also sort of, for lack of a better word, cleaning up a little bit of mess from before. And one of those, respectfully, was the on again, off again tumultuous relationship that happened with prior ownership and the Hardy brothers. And there were some really successful characters and viral skits and I mean, the whole broken Matt Hardy character really took the internet by storm and was a standout for Impact at a time when they really needed something. And the industry was at least talking about that. But now it looks like, well, they're not going to be a part moving forward. And you're sort of put in the middle of that, even though you didn't create it. That's a kind of a tough spot for you to be in, no?
What a nightmare. And me and Matt have talked about this, and Jeff, the level of, I'll just say it, the honesty. I was not given full clarity, although that time of my life, I assumed I had full clarity on who paid for what and what contract said and what I'll just call it the Hardy's understanding was, and what Impact's understanding, I don't want to say Anthem Wrestling, Impact's understanding was. I think they had an understanding that I obviously wasn't there, not privy to, and didn't understand it. And then Ed and company enter and say, no, this is what our deal says from a legal perspective, because that's all I cared about. I'm like, what do we really have the rights for? And then I thought I could help things, and I definitely didn't help things, probably made things worse for me personally. But man, it was a mess because it was all in the ownership of the IP that was created, as well as the expenses that Matt and Jeff went through that either were never reimbursed or never agreed upon it being reimbursed. And that's where it got totally muddy. And it was a mess. I mean, it was a complete mess. I'm glad those days are behind me. But to defend Ed, I don't really think, and maybe it wasn't his job, but I think on the other hand, it was to do the due diligence on who really owes what. But Ed was so new to the business at the time, I don't even think he knew the questions to ask, but he inherited the situation just like I did. And we knew we had to figure some kind of exit and then throw in not even the wild card, throw in the strategic play that the Hardys were going back to the WWE. They had no incentive, I don't say play ball, to move the ball down the court in the Impact Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions Avenue anyway. So that, in a lot of ways, further, I don't say complicated things, but that was further to the reality. In hindsight, could we have all sat down and said, all right, Matt and Jeff aren't coming back regardless. Let's just kind of move on. That might have helped. I don't think solve things. But Conrad, I'm trying to paint as good a picture as possible that Matt and Jeff, Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions, and myself, back to our goal alignment, we really, really, really were never aligned and never were going to be aligned when they made the decision to go back. And rightly so.
You mentioned, and we're going to be talking about this a lot through the show, that you were, you had some bad habits at the time. And we want to give everybody a heads up that cold turkey might be great on sandwiches, but there is a better way to break your bad habits. And no, we're not talking about some crazy mind voodoo from Abyss, talking about the Bengals or Joe Burrow. No, we're talking about our partner Fume. You see, they look at the problem in a different way. Not everything in a bad habit is wrong. So instead of a drastic, uncomfortable change, why not just remove the bad from your habit? You see, Fume is an innovative, award-nominated device that does just that. Instead of electronics, Fume is completely natural. Instead of vapor, Fume uses flavored air. And instead of harmful chemicals, Fume uses all natural, delicious flavors. You get it. Instead of bad, Fume is good. It's a habit you're free to enjoy, and it makes replacing your bad habit easy. Your Fume comes with an adjustable airflow dial, and it's designed with movable parts and magnets for your fidgeting. It's really great when you're trying to break a habit and have something to play with there. My wife loved the taste. She was blown away with how fresh it was the first time. She really liked the crisp mint. What's great is there's a ton of different flavors for you to try, like maple pepper or white cranberry. How about some sparkling grapefruit? Check out orange vanilla or raspberry lemon, something for everybody. You're really going to appreciate the way this thing feels. Talking about the Fume, it's well weighted. It's perfectly balanced. It's extremely fun to fidget with. And by the way, it's made out of beautiful wood. It's a cool shape. You're just going to feel cool using it. But here's the reality, guys. Stopping is something we all put off because it's hard. But switching to Fume, well, now dude, that's easy, enjoyable, and even fun. In fact, Fume has served over 100,000 customers. They have thousands of success stories, and there's no reason that can't be you. So join Fume in accelerating humanity's breakup from destructive habits by picking up the Journey Pack today. Head to tryfume.com and use code Jarrett, and you'll save 10% off when you get the Journey Pack. That's tryfum.com and use the code Jarrett. That's JARRETT. To save an additional 10% off your order today. So listen, let's talk a little bit about what we're doing here. We've got TV that's being taped in the archives for Global Force Wrestling. And because once upon a time you were trying this thing on your own, you launched Global Force. You announced it back in 2014, right after WrestleMania. Went out to Las Vegas, did some tapings. You got some cool archival footage there. You're bringing that over with you as part of the deal. I'm sure that in the purchase or acquisition, there was some discussion about the value of that, or what are you doing with this yet to air content? What was the plan for Impact to do with that, if anything?
So that kind of goes back to, okay. So in December of 2016, Global Force Entertainment is under a holding deal with Fox Sports. As a part of that holding deal, we had 16 one-hour episodes. That was the Global Force content. As we move along, and against Karen and Hermie Sadler and a bunch of other people's wishes, as we merge, I said, all right, if we're merging, the content is a part of this, and there is value to that. Okay. How can we determine the value of this? Well, a broadcast, and I'm not saying it's broadcast, it was making on broadcast, but I'm trying to give you a kind of analogy. On a broadcast network would value it at X amount of dollars because they pay X amount of dollars for their content. A cable values it at this number, digital at this number. Okay. In our world, and I say our, well, that's nice and country, in the Anthem wrestling exhibitions,
We got it.
there was a 2-hour Impact, a 3-hour premium pay-per-view. So those are the kind of valuations that when I say a 3-hour premium pay-per-view, that's an international, because they didn't have transactional pay-per-view. There was also a transactional value domestically in the United States. So there is a number we could have landed on. And as a part of the agreement, we agreed upon, okay, we're going to value it somewhere between television and pay-per-view. Okay. We can't value it at 16 one-hour episodes, Conrad. Well, why is that? Well, we don't do 1-hour shows. So is it going to be a 2-hour show? Nope, probably not. And then from the very beginning, my suggestion was as we're kind of rebooting this whole thing, to create our one night only monthly specials, those 3 hours, that's a lot of content we got to create in Orlando. Why don't we take the 16 1 hours and turn them into 4 3 hours episodes? So we'll have 12 hours of content. So I'm saying we're going to reduce it from 16 to 12 hours. So again, there's some math in there, and that when you get accountants and valuations, and look, I'm so glad all that everybody walked away happy. As a footnote, that this is kind of the point of the crux of the issue of the litigation, but it's all water under the bridge now. But that was part of the plan. Okay, we don't have to go to Orlando to shoot one night onlys. We're just going to shoot the Impact show to get things rebooted, and we're going to use the GFW content to not only save a boatload of money, but it kind of gives a story of how the Global Force, because the entire 16 hours is all about crowning a heavyweight, a tag, the women's champions as we move on. It was about crowning champions. So that was kind of the creative thread of that. Makes sense, Conrad?
Yeah, it does. And
And
I guess the part of the name here is we're going to rename the whole thing at some point. Global Force Wrestling. You felt like a rebrand, and maybe the group felt like a rebrand was due.
Well, that's pretty topical right now. I mean, I was very clear in my thoughts. Now you have to go back to 2016, 17. I thought literally, and you can go back and watch some of the tapes, from the time that the decision was made to throw TNA away, and I hate to even bring it up, but it was a part of the throwing of the name away, get rid of the 6-sided ring. I mean, the people in the Impact Zone, there's video of it. They literally turned their back on the promotion. We don't want to do this. But the decision was made to drop TNA and go from TNA Presents Impact to Impact Wrestling. I thought that was the beginning of the end of the brand in so much, because we confused them, which means we were going to lose them. And then it just kind of gradually went, and the TNA brand was about AJ Styles and X Division and Samoa Joe and Chris Daniels and this kind of talent over there. And yes, the Main Event Mafia were the antagonists, but then all of a sudden it became Hulk Hogan and friends and all that. So this is the conversation I had with Ed, that I'm not talking about, and he knew because he was a part of the Fight Network. They were a part, Anthem was a part of, they were one of the first buyers in 04, 05, 06, 07 of buying TNA. So he understood this concept. The TNA brand, he was an international market, meant a lot more to him than most folks. So, all right, I think we need a rebrand. I think we've confused them. Look, do we want to do away with everything? No, they weren't really too keen on bringing TNA back. I understood that. I was obviously had ownership in the name Global Force. I said, let's go with Global Force Presents Impact, and kind of walked them through the Corrigan years, which they were in the middle of all that, just the bad press. I thought that it needed to be a rebrand and heavily leaned into that. And Ed agreed. He's like, okay, I see where you're going with that. I said, I'm not saying get rid of the name Impact. That's the name of the TV show. And I think we can identify that if we go down this creative path.
So we know that there's a lot moving in that direction. You're back in the saddle again. You've got your arms around your baby again. Sort of. It's different from when you were first battling out back in 02. And
it ain't a baby now. It's kind of a high school senior, maybe a college freshman that went off, and he was not the same, pal, but go ahead. I'm kidding.
But it's not just, hey, we're trying to make the budget work and all these sort of macro things. We got to get in the business too. Unfortunately, we got to talk about a less than awesome topic here. Alberto Del Rio was a big part of this, and he winds up being suspended while he's the champion. He had a pretty public circumstance with his girlfriend at the time, who we know used to be Paige in WWE. But it puts Global Force into a pretty impossible situation, because you guys have 6 weeks of TV you've taped with him. This is less than ideal, no?
Obviously, we're talking about 2017. In 2020 pandemic, whenever it was when I was going through, and this is probably the litigation. Boy, did I have time to really, because I had to, and look at things. But when you really look at the rearview mirror and look at 2016, early 2017, Ed and Nordham getting into the business like on a full-time basis. He's a mergers and acquisitions attorney. And in 9 months, He had to deal with the Hardy situation. He had to deal with the Del Rio situation.
That's a lot.
He had to deal with dumbass Jeff Jarrett situation.
I say, and you.
I know. Look, I'm supposed to be his partner, or I wasn't supposed to be. I was his partner. Look, and I've made my amends the very best I could. But Lynn and Ed, no doubt in their mind, had to say, "Man, we didn't sign up for this." I mean, we taped 6 episodes, 6 weeks worth of episodes, and Alberto was not in a good place in his life at all, like myself. It was not like he was kind of a fringe talent. He was the guy who, and to me, in the ring, over-delivered. He was fantastic for the product in the ring. Outside, it's tough, Conrad. It was tough, very tough.
There was some talk that you guys met with Rey Mysterio and Conan. As a reminder, Rey Mysterio is not with WWE at this time. In fact, in 2018, he's actually going to work the All In show and then go back to work with WWE. But there was a time where Rey wasn't there. And we see there with the photo, you get an opportunity to meet with Conan and Rey. Obviously, you've got a lot of roots down in Lucha Libre, as your buddy Vince Russo would call it. What was the hope? What was the goal? Or is it obvious? And why didn't it work out?
Well, on a little bucket list, have you ever seen the footage? Because we worked in Tijuana. That picture that was just shown on My World YouTube is Ed Norton, myself, Conan, and Ray Ray.
Yeah.
And we went down and it was me, LA Knight, but there was some talent. We went down there, and obviously Karen, the Queen, and Ed was getting kind of a first up look at Lucha Libre in a sellout house. This at the time Crash was going, but me and Karen both took the 619, which is, me and Karen laugh about it. That how often does a couple get to take? But anyway, it was a cool spot. But I say all this to say, as a part of, and this is why I want to kind of back up here, as a part of kind of the vision of everything, because I knew, Conrad, this is where you get into Orlando and budgets, and I'm like, okay, we've got to create content every week. How are we going to do it on an economical basis? Orlando, obviously, I found out like in March, that was too rich of a budget. So, okay, we've got to figure this out. And as the original kind of vision of GFW is, what do we call it now? The forbidden door. But anyway, I said, hey, man, let's kind of create international opportunities and figure out, can we go to Tijuana and create content? Can we work with AAA and create content? Is there going to be a Japan opportunity? Is there going to be a UK opportunity? Because I wanted to figure out how we're going to create content internationally. And that was kind of the vision from the very beginning, because the streaming network that, this is 16, 17. And as the vision and the rebranding, I said, all right, let's, Global Wrestling Network, GWN, and Global Force Wrestling is the brand and everything that goes with it. But so going to Mexico was a kind of it wasn't just a talent thing. It was, how can we develop these international relationships to give talent an opportunity to work, but also for us to create content. And Alberto, being bilingual and a superstar in both countries, I was, and we were really counting on him heavily to be a big part of the brand.
It's interesting to think, what could have been. Because in an alternate universe, you guys were really close to having a lot of really cool stuff fall in your lap. The timing for everybody just wasn't correct. Fair to say?
Little inside baseball. One night, sitting around a room up in Titanland.
Yep.
On the 4th floor, the chairman kind of reclines back in his chair and thinking things. And I don't say it out of nowhere because there was always different things and trying to read the room and where are we going with this. But a statement was made: you never, ever want to be too far in front of the curve. I'll never forget. Now, this was said in 2018. I'll never forget those words, Conrad, because how it had no correlation to this story. Obviously, no meaning, no nothing. But as I look back, not just on my career, but just kind of so many different things, boy, is there so much validity in that. But to your point, the world wasn't quite ready for it, and I did my damnedest to screw it up. Not on purpose, but the disease. I mean, I nuked every opportunity.
There's an opportunity for Nick Aldis to re-sign, and he does not take it. He's going to leave GFW. He's been with Impact for a long, long time. And Nick had this to say, quote, "There was no release. There was nothing like that. A contract was offered to me, which I declined. Anthem offered me a contract. I read the contract. It's not something that, I'll say this in the nicest way that I can, it's not a contract that anyone with any value, any sense of self-value or self-worth would ever sign. There's no point in signing a contract to make it exclusive to one place if you're not getting anything in return," end quote. He also said the only person there he really wanted to work with was Alberto, and he had already worked with him. He said he wouldn't sign, but he would work on a handshake deal, which he did for a number of shows. And at that point, they stopped booking him. He said he'd been loyal to Jeff Jarrett for a long time, and he didn't find out from Jeff Jarrett that they no longer wanted to keep the arrangement. He said there was a lot of negativity and he didn't want to be associated with it, but he still had dates on his calendar with them and was told later by somebody else that they wouldn't do anything with anyone not under contract. So I know you're great, close personal friends with Nick Aldis. I know you would even accompany him a year later in his match at All In with Cody Rhodes for the NWA title. So clearly you guys patched up any sort of misunderstanding that was there. But what do you remember about the contract offer that was extended? Did you just feel like at the time we didn't have it in the budget? We had done all we could do. What was the thinking?
I wish I could recall. I may ask you Nick next time because, yeah, like you said, there's no doubt I was on the Nick Aldis train way, way, way before this. And as far as Global Force, all that, the contracts, I don't remember what the exact situation was, but look, I was, as a part of my demons, look, nobody was, I probably wasn't the best friend or business person to not just Nick, to a lot of folks. But as far as that actual statement that he put out, I don't recall that. But he's right on the contracts that a guy that he obviously, and I don't know where Billy sits in all this. I don't know the alternative, but we were trying to put together, and look, Nick's not cheap and he shouldn't be. His day rate might not have worked for us as well. But a deal was not to be done, and he wanted to do his own thing. That's my best recollection. That's why I'm wondering where the NWA, how soon it was that he signed with those guys.
Let's talk about what Dave wrote in the Observer. Apparently, most of the new contracts GFW has signed with talent include the company getting 10% of all talent independent date money, and that the talent would not get cut into at all with their merchandise sold with their likeness if sold directly by the company. So the rumor here, I'm sure this can't be true. I want you to poke holes in it. If you work here and we put you on TV, but you get an independent booking outside of us, we want 10%. And also too, if we sell shit with your face on it, you get nothing. That doesn't sound right to me.
The merchandise, that's just silly. That's,
yeah.
I mean, that's Dave probably was told that in his defense, but that's all he takes. Yep. That's who in there. That's not.
Yeah. No, nobody does that. Yeah.
No. The 10%, look, don't hold me to anything, but we're going to put you on TV and we go get the booking for you. As a booking agent, we get the 10%. If we get the booking for you, big difference in just saying, hey, we get 10% of your independent bookings, which you go hustle. It's, Uncle Dave. Oh, I tell you what, we won't get into this, but
let's talk about something that made the news. This is a long time ago.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I'm sure it's all water under the bridge now. I know how you roll. But when you're doing this deal, WWE winds up running a show in Nashville, as they do. They ran the Bridgestone.
Ah,
And I assume you guys are probably doing some radio across the street or something like that. I know they used to do those tailgate things on the Zone, the big Nashville sports station. But there's a pretty famous story that there were some WWE talent and some GFW talent all sort of commingling. And our pal Cody, not Cody Rhodes, Cody Angle, your son, was enamored. Oh my God, that's Braun Strowman. What a huge human being. Obviously, we know Cody is a huge wrestling fan, wanted to go do a bit of a meet and greet with a guy he saw on TV, and he's been raised around the wrestling business. He wouldn't think he couldn't do that. So here he goes. Allegedly, it doesn't go all that well. What really happened?
wait, you're saying Cody was involved?
I was under the impression Cody tried to meet Braun Strowman. Braun blew him off. Karen got involved. There was a big scene. That's what the internet was led to believe. What really happened?
Okay, so maybe that had happened at another time, but what I remember, and you're
Okay.
going to put it all on me. The one thing on a positive note that Lower Broad and Conrad, back in the day, if I'd have known you, but there's a private club.
We'd had a lot of fun there.
But anyway, there's
You talking about upstairs downtown?
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, who would call it the Knock Knock Club? But anyway, how'd you know about that?
My buddy Brad, he's the mayor of Nashville.
Oh yeah, okay. That's where me and Brad, I think, our first.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. But we were there, and they had a house show. But me and Karen were downtown partying. I'm sure we either had a dinner or something. But me and AJ Styles text. I got to see AJ that night for the first time. When did he start? 2016. Yeah. Anyway, he hadn't been there long, and man, I was so happy for him after everything he had been through. But anyway, got to see AJ. I texted him. He came up to the Knock Knock Club. Obviously, AJ doesn't drink, so again, he's looking at Jeff side-eyed. But anyway, we laughed and cut up and all that. And I believe either the group with us or whatever, but we were going across the street to the stage. Right across the street's Tootsie's, and then right down behind the stage. We were going into one of those honky tonks, and that whole story got blown up that Braun had said something. I don't know, but it was a joke. It was a complete joke, and Karen fired back at him in a working manner. It was one of those. And I was a mess. I won't even. There's some people that took care of me that night. Anyway, and we got home. But that whole story, Conrad, kind of unraveled over a non-issue. So that was 17, because 18 at Hall of Fame, Braun and Karen and myself and all that. That was kind of a chuckle spot, but I guess it blew up internet-wise and the memes and the stories and all that. But God, that's the first time I've ever heard Cody's involved. I'll have to ask Karen, did it start over something along those lines? But
well, I'll tell you this: if he was mean to Cody, he's an asshole.
I'm not buying that.
I don't either, because everybody I know who knows him in real life, nicest guy.
He's a sweetheart of a guy. Yeah. Big time. And if he did something quote unquote dismissive, he didn't do it on purpose.
Yeah.
No.
Davey Richards is going to request and get his release from GFW. Lots of talent, rumored to be doing something similar.
Yep.
We know Davey is sort of playing hokey pokey with wrestling. He's in, he's out, but he was out here. Is this just breaking down to what you guys could budget for him and what it would cost him in his real job?
It's like, you'll give great analogies of this, Conrad, but if a new coach and team, you got to have turnover. And we were doing turnover, and it was nothing against him, but also I think his deal, I think he wanted out not just because he wasn't getting used. He was ready to go. What was he doing? But anyway, it was the simplicity things. I mean, Davey, Eddie, because they came back, just trying to think of the different Tyrus, Hardy's. There was a pretty big group that was a part of the turnover, and there was X amount of spots. And I get it. The guys that were making X amount of dollars in 16, which it didn't fit the math. It's kind of why it's not the reason, but it's one of the reasons. Look, the talent budget, they were spending more than they were making under the current regime. Things had to be reshuffled, or why did Anthem even buy it to begin with? It was a reshuffling of the deck, and that's never fun in this business, ever.
The decision is made to air the old GFW footage, which had people like Bobby Roode and Chael Sonnen, all the stuff that was taped in Las Vegas. Are you glad that at least made air and it was broadcast?
Sure. I mean, again, to go back in this time, I had, and now certainly in December and January, boy, I had rose-colored glasses on, like unbelievable. Like, okay, because when you know who the Asper family is and their position, and look, it was much bigger than Anthem Wrestling Exhibitions. I'm talking about Axis, and I call it Anthem Sports and Entertainment. I just under the belief how much it was, much more is going to be blown up. So with the global, our streaming service, Global Wrestling Network, which is now Impact Plus, and kind of where the business was, Conrad, because when you look at AAA, Crash, Japan, UK, obviously the Last Frontier of India, kind of the pieces of the puzzle that I think in a lot of ways are still there, but AEW in such a positive way has, just look at the opportunity that they seized. Look to Wembley, and that says it all. But I was very, very optimistic, Conrad, at this time. And so those 16 1-hour episodes was really, hey, this kind of gives us a set point and goes into the library, but it is a lot of money that Impact didn't have to spend in year one. That to me, and that Ed landed on that too. He's like, oh, wow. I said, yeah, they're already made. We're going to have to tune them up, and Chael come in and some VOs and this and that and clean up. But that's 4 months of premium programming that we don't have to pay to produce. That was not going to be episodic anyway. It was a good transition content piece.
Let's make a transition now to talking about clean sheets. That's what Miracle Made offers you. And I absolutely love mine. Number one, I get to do 3 times less laundry because these sheets are silver infused. So there's no gross odors. So they're going to be clean. Here's what I mean. You're sleeping on bacteria and you might not even realize it. It's the reason you wake up with a stuffy nose and you've got to blow your nose in the morning. It's the reason you have breakouts and acne. It's the reason your pores are clogged because you're sleeping on bacteria. You need Miracle Made sheets. They're going to kill like 99.7% of the bacteria there. And it's not going to smell funky. You get to wash it 3 times as less. Oh, and how about this? It's also thermoregulating. Yeah, that silver can actually keep you cool at night. Going to help you fall asleep and more importantly, stay asleep. When you get too hot, you get too cold, man, you're miserable. You're going to toss and turn, fight with the covers. Miracle Made can help you with all of that. I absolutely love mine. I think you will love yours too. They're also luxuriously comfortable. It feels like you're at like a 5-star resort. Miracle sheets, by the way, are the perfect gift for your spouse, your friends, or your family. Who doesn't want better sleep and luxurious feeling bed sheets? And by the way, check this out. This is real. These come with 3 free towels. Yeah, you get 2 gifts in one just in time for the holidays. These are silver infused fabrics inspired by NASA. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go right now to trymiracle.com/myworld to try it today or gift it to someone special this holiday season. And again, we got a special deal for our listeners. You can save over 40%. And if you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. By the way, Miracle, so confident in their product. They back it with a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning if you're not 100% satisfied, you'll get a full refund. So upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go right now to trymiracle.com/myworld and use the code myworld to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Again, that's trymiracle.com/myworld to treat yourself, a friend, or a loved one this holiday season. So Jeff, let's get back into it, man. You guys are balling on the budget. We've established that. It's coming out here. You're going to tape 12 weeks of TV in 6 days. Now this is a 2-hour program. So 12 weeks means 24 hours of content, less commercials, in 6 days, aka double deckers, double headers, day after day after day after day. I assume most of this is because you can save on crew, you can save on travel, you can save on rental, you can do a lot of it in post and get out of there, but it's expensive to get everybody down there, get everybody flown down there, put up in a hotel, pay the rent on the building, da 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 da. Let's get in, let's get out. We're trying something, but this feels a little bit like when WCW used to tape their syndicated shows down at Disney. Was that sort of the idea?
I mean, is 1,000% the ongoing battle that happens in running any business. In this, it was creative versus production, and production won. The creative suffered and production won out big. And you mentioned all those cost cutting savings. The big thing is the studio loading in and loading out. And I say loading in and loading out in this kind of scenario is not just the lights up and down, but the bleachers, everything that goes with it. It just was it was, I don't like that word cheap, but it was the most economical way to produce content. And this is, and you can kind of see how it built from our March, January tapings I just was an observer. Then March, I think we went April, May, and then July, and now doing 12 weeks worth of taping. That's a quarter of tapings. It was less than ideal to grow the product. And it just drove me crazy. I kind of knew, I don't know, little by little by little, like, okay, it's really going to be hard to grow this property with the limited budgets. But, even in these days, I said, okay, Lynn doesn't want to spend that kind of money, period. I get it. But man, what are they looking at for ROI? Like, what is the real reality? What kind of return on investment do they want? And to this day, I don't know what that answer is.
You guys announced on August 14th that they're going to strip Alberto Del Rio, he's 40 at the time, of his GFW championship. And Meltzer would write, the decision, which had been going back and forth as late as the weekend as to what to do, was made by Ed Nordum. So Ed is the guy who's going to pull the trigger on Alberto. Were you an advocate of that decision?
You know what? This is something that I just specifically remember because I respected Ed and Lynn. It's their money. At the end of the day, now we're partners and all this, but I'm not the attorney. Ed, you've got to dig in and talk to Alberto's attorney and what's the forecast. Sure, he talked to me and yes, he would ask my opinion and kind of do his due diligence. But at the end of the day, it was really a legal set of circumstances that Ed ultimately said, this is the direction we're going, and I fully supported him. I understood. I did. It was less than ideal creatively in so many ways and publicly and just moving down the court, but I've supported Ed. He did what he had to do.
He's not the only talent who's heading for the hills. Tyrus goes on social media and posts a video announcing he's not coming to the TV taping. He says he's been treated like a second-class citizen, and that's not the way it should have been. Says he's been playing phone tags with the officials. And if they want to treat him that way, he's not coming to the tapings. I think he just recently retired after a pretty lengthy run with the NWA title with Billy Corgan's NWA. but this is his next to last stop, I suppose. What do you remember about how things got sideways with Tyrus?
Same thing as Eddie Edward, just the opportunities, the dollars. He was, we'll call it, a part of the old regime. There was no bad blood, no he said, she said. It just kind of it was a part of the transition.
We haven't asked this at all yet. Where does Scott D'Amore fit into all this?
So
like we've talked a lot about you and Ed. We've yet to say Scott's name on the show.
And I'm just trying to think. I called him when we were kind of putting the team back to, a team. I don't say back together because it was new players. Brought Sanjay on board, who had worked with me at Global Force. Brought Scott, who had obviously been a big part of Global Force. I'm just trying to think. There was Rockstar Spud or James Curtin, Abyss. Just trying to think of the players, but Scott was there from the beginning. What's your question? Because where was he at? He was there from the beginning of this.
Okay. What was he doing?
I'd say talent relations, 1 and 1A and 1B, and a part of, I'll say administrative, but I mean, he was a part of the team. And when I say that, talent relations and creative, the process. Yeah, all the above. I call it the nucleus. He was there from day one.
Let's talk about you're scheduled to appear as part of Team GFW, teaming with Moose and Bobby Lashley down for AAA. You're also going to be working with Revolucha, teaming with MVP and Sam Adonis in September. I'm just trying to understand, are you actively able to take bookings outside of Impact as well? This seems weird.
It was the conversation. Hey, Ed, because Ed didn't want me wrestling. He kind of made it clear. And I've chuckled to myself. Was that kind of a handoff from Dixie? Like, you know what I mean? Like I don't want Jeff wrestling. It's funny as we sit here in 2023 or, even 2022 and AEW. No, we want you to wrestle and do that, but he did not want me wrestling. And the conversations that I had with Ed were, look, no problem. And in Ed's mind, hey, you focus on the show, which I totally get and supported, and was not dived into me being a wrestler at all. I'm not saying that, but I went to Ed and said, hey, Ed, here's kind of the situation. I'm going to Mexico. They see me as a talent before they see me as an executive for Anthem Wrestling. That's just kind of the nature of the beast with my AAA, all that kind of stuff. He's like, oh, I got it. No problem. So it was, I wouldn't go in there just to wrestle, but if I'm going there, they wanted me to wrestle because they thought I brought value.
Let's talk a little bit about the Global Wrestling Network. You announced a streaming service. What'd you think of the execution of that and the way it all came together?
It was, look, this is such early days, and that you kind of have to, and I don't know where Honor Club sat during this time. Obviously, AEW didn't even exist. I don't know where New Japan, but in 2016-17, outside of the WWE, the biggest library on the market, I think by far, would be Impact. And when you have an AJ Styles complete library, Samoa Joe complete library, and not complete, but all, so much there. And then you put in Kurt Angle, and of course the Hogan years and all the talent. But at this time, you had 15, 16-year-old library, a boatload of content that can be the foundation. But if we're moving into these premium pay-per-views and creating fresh content, and again, as a component in the Anthem Sports and Entertainment umbrella, it was at a premium of a priority. So it was exciting. And I know Toronto and their partners were working their butt off trying to get this thing up and running.
Let's talk a little bit about Jim Cornette. He's going to come in and take over as the authority figure, replacing Bruce Pritchard. What's the thinking here of Bruce out, Cornette in?
Well, Bruce had, you may know better than me. Did he just finally tap, said, I can't deal with Jeff's ass anymore? Or it had, he felt it run its course?
I think it was a money issue.
Okay.
Best I can recall. Boy, this sounds awful, but I think he was probably, if not among the highest paid performers on the shows. And he was getting first class air and car pickup and the whole thing. I mean, you were rolling out the red carpet for him.
I wanted him bad in the beginning, and Ed started questioning it, right?
He's the authority figure, so it's not like he's going to be paying it off with matches. So if we are cutting costs, I assume that was what it was.
That, but also I can remember kind of having these conversations again.
I remember his per day rate, and it was substantial.
Ed's in his defense, but still lack of knowledge. He just didn't have, and I'm sure he's changed now, but like, I can't tell you how many people came up to me in that short period of time and say, damn, I enjoy working with Bruce. What a producer he is.
Right.
And I would just kind of chuckle and go, hey, can you go tell Ed that? Because Ed just saw Bruce as a talking head.
He saw him as a character on TV and the dollar amount associated with it.
Yes, yes.
And it's hard to really monetize or associate dollar value, even with what Bruce does today. Like, either you get it or you don't, right?
Buddy, that's a whole nother podcast, but you said it. Either you get it.
I mean, I'm not trying to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, here's what's bizarre. In this day and age, I'm not talking about word for word writing promos. Just don't get me down that avenue. But with the recent passing of Bobby Knight and me watching different clips, and again, me being the basketball junkie and the sports junkie, and you talk about all this, at the end of the day, and Jim Harbaugh, college winner, you kind of look at Miami Dolphins, all that. At the end of the day, a head coach, you could absolutely replace that name in another language and say, oh, he's not the head coach. He's the lead producer.
Yes.
What do you mean no. What he does is he gets the most out of his players. Well, that's a coach. No, for today, let's just call him a producer. Well, you can't call that. He's the head coach. It's because I think we have it ingrained in our brain. And I'll say this, the magic of Jarrett and Jerry Lawler, the dividends speak for themselves. You can go to our man that we're kind of talking about, Jim Cornette, with all the data, but the Memphis ratings, the Louisville ratings, in a very, very, these aren't even B markets. In those 70s, they're C markets. Nashville, Louisville, Memphis, all that. We'll call it B and C markets. But the revenue that was produced out of that, if you really drill it down completely and throw everything out, great TV time slots, you got this, and partners and opponents, it all goes down to Jarrett producing Jerry Lawler. You can't slice it and dice it any other way. So talent not being produced is about like,
careful.
Yeah.
Hey, so Bruce Pritchard was a fly-in. Jim Cornette, not a fly-in.
But what I'm saying is, I'm talking about the value of what Bruce brought to the table that was completely dismissed in this era.
Yes.
You said, all right, we're going to bring Jim Cornette. Why'd you bring him? Well, guess what? Now, Cornette lights a fire under a lot of folks, and he does that week after week. And his
by the way, did you see the clip of him talking about your tongue-in-cheek invitation?
I did not.
He addressed it on his podcast.
Oh no.
And he said, now he was posed the question, are you going to go pick up your old pal Jim Cornette and bring him down to the show? And of course, Jeff said, because he means it, well, man, I'd love to see Corny, and I would love to see Jeff. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but not there. He said it tongue in cheek. He knew I wasn't going, blah, blah, blah. So he gets it. But it was funny that he had to make a statement on social media just off of our off the cuff. Hey, you're in town. You're gonna look him up. I mean, come on. But the internet reported it as if it was an actual invitation, like you were trying to make an overture to get him on the program. Like,
It's crazy.
and so just so everybody knows, when that happened and it blew up, Jeff just screen capped it and sent it to me and says, "Thanks a lot, partner." Because it was like, dude, I'm not trying to make things difficult. It's just you're in his town, your buddies with him, just go say hello. And
Oh man,
boy, the internet just went off on that.
yeah. The other thing, and it's a style of producing TV. I believe figureheads, and that term, yeah, I get it, and I'm in agreement. They can be overused and they can be convoluted and everything that went with it. But all through time, and I'm going way before the cable explosion, whether it's Stanley, the matchmakers of the day, they are a thread that is, I just think, integral to storytelling. And Bruce out, Cornette is a colorful storyteller, different style of Bruce, but that's what he was used for in these segments, as well as produce folks backstage.
We would see Dave Meltzer say, Cornette announced they're going to decide the new champion in the ring and not hand somebody the title, announcing a gauntlet match for next week's TV. This was taped on the 17th, will air on the 24th. And it came down to Eli Drake beating Eddie Edwards when they were the last two guys.
Yeah.
Drake is a great talker, but I don't think he's the guy you want as world champion right now when you're trying to rebuild the company.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you do better than I do.
Well, let's talk about that. I just want to repeat it again. This is from Dave, and Dave, by the way, has been on the money so many times I can't even count. Like, he was writing in like 91, 92, 93. Steve Austin is going to be this generation's Ric Flair. He is the next great superstar. He saw it. But here in 2017, he did right. Drake is a great talker. Yeah. But I don't think he's the guy you want as world champion right now when you're trying to rebuild the company. Well, if he were here today, Mr. LA Knight would say, Dave, let me talk to you. What did you see as the upside for Eli Drake? Because it's all of a sudden he's like a, I don't know, 15, 20 year overnight sensation. The world has finally caught up to the talent, but he was showing that talent on the NWA Power Show. Maybe not enough people were watching. He was showing that talent on Impact and Global Force, but maybe not enough people were watching. Now he's doing it on SmackDown, and well, everybody's talking about it. What did you see in Eli Drake that made you think he's the guy? Let's go with him.
Conrad, look, I can sit there and come up with 15 different, I don't say, look, I can come up with all kinds of what if, or I did it for this reason, that reason. I can remember asking 2 or 3 people, how come he's not at WWE? Like, what happened? And here's why. When you kind of go from Alberto and that vision, this is just kind of, maybe it's how I was born and raised, or the vision, or looking through things, is you got to have to look at your roster and say, all right, who can perform the very best with as many people as possible when you're doing 12 shows in 6 days? You better have a workhorse that has personality. And so I don't think it's any magical formula. Who can go out and tear the house down with as many different opponents as possible that can talk? What was his saying back then? Oh my gosh, I just had a dummy. No. Oh gosh, Conrad. Anyway, personality, charisma, talk. You looked at our roster, who was ready to. I
thought it was dummy. Yeah.
Dummy. Yeah, that's okay. I was close, but that's what I'm saying is he fit the bill. And here's Dave. I don't care who we name champion, because of the platform that we were currently on. He wouldn't have liked anybody we said. If we could have got Ric Flair and Bruno Martino's love child, he wouldn't have liked it.
It's interesting to me, though, that it feels like so many people this year, Like there's been some other podcasters who've been pretty particular about LA Knight's presentation. He was doing this 6 years ago.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a new thing he just started.
Not at all.
Low key. He's finishing up here. This feels like second verse, same as the first with Low Key. Straight in the Observer, Low Key was booked to be a part of a multi-person X Division match at Bound for Glory and was unhappy about that. From one source, he showed up at the first day at TV where he was supposed to get a shot at the GFW title and Alberto in the main event, but that was canceled. When they laid out the GFW title picture, which involved Eli Drake, Johnny Impact, Matt Sydal, and others, but not him, he was unhappy from day one. He worked the tapings and was complaining a lot to management, and after being talked with, he wasn't happy and made the decision to leave, and both sides agreed to go their separate ways. Man, I'm telling you, the first time I saw Low Key in 2002, I was convinced this is the next big thing. Never really happened. It was like a lot of off the field and behind the scenes stuff maybe prevented it. At least that's the rumor and innuendo. What was the particular circumstance here in 2017 with him leaving Impact / GFW?
Marcus, will you pull that picture back up? For you, Conrad. And what's your thoughts on that look? And I'm going to tell you mine. I think that it's so damn marketable.
I love it. I think it's tremendous. If you're not watching, we all remember the video game, The Hitman, and the Jason Statham movie, The Transporter. It feels like he's going for that sort of look. Looks like maybe an extra from the Kill Bill franchise. He's got a black suit on. He's got a white shirt on. He's got black gloves on. And in this particular circumstance, he's got a red tie. I don't think he always wore a red tie, but I like that look and feel.
Oh, Conrad.
I know some people would say, oh, it's Mr. Hughes. No, it's not. I like it.
I walked up to him and I'm just like, dude, it's magical. And I said, this is so damn marketable. Cause to me it's, and look, I'm a delusional optimist, but you know, it's a video game vibe. It's an action figure vibe.
Yes.
It is a,
it's different.
It's different, but you know, with his moves and, you know, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, the X Division style, it just fit. And then here we go again. Rinse and repeat. Same story. It just didn't work out. But man, oh man, that guy oozes charisma. But
what was the issue?
If I remember correctly, he didn't want to play ball.
Said differently, he didn't want to do the JOB.
That's what I'm saying. I was very particular. I'm not sure it's specifically that, but he didn't like how we did creative.
Bruce Pritchard once went on Something to Wrestle and said that Bob Holly was complaining about creative and said, I got an idea. Why don't you give me the belt? And then Bruce said, and then what? And Bob's follow-up was, and then I'll beat everybody. Is that the low-key creative, you think?
That's good. No. We were just talking before we came on the air how there is just some people's personality that Conrad, would you be nice?
I'm just remembering what we were talking about. You were like, before we clicked record, it's like, oh, okay. All right, I'm ready.
Can you elaborate when I say there's just some people that Conrad?
I don't have any comment. I'm just listening. I'm trying to understand and trying to learn. I'll keep my laughter to myself. Let's move the fuck on.
I love you, Conrad. But no, I'm saying, and I'm defending folks like this. And again, it goes back to experience that you just kind of have to, I guess it was bit into me. It's just amazing that even on the smallest of scales, we would have young guys come into the territory. And my old man would say, hey, we need to have this guy chase. I'm going to find the right partner and he'll chase those tag titles. Tell Dundee or Dutch, hey, I don't care what you do. Don't let him win a tag title, but let's go 12 weeks and build it toward a cage and he wins in a cage. Just the most simplistic. The chase is what drew the money. Because
yes, not the win.
My dad would say, all right, they won. All right, we got to get them off of them and move on. And that was kind of something that would drive my old man, it would drive me crazy about my old man. I'm like, wait a minute, let them be champions at least for a month. And he's like, the hell with that. There ain't no money in that. I said, they're going to be 1 week champion. He said, oh, people don't remember that. Oh, yeah, they do, Dad. It's that kind of give and take, but it's the chase. It's the damn story. Ugh. I'm off my soapbox today, Conrad.
Let's talk about your pal, Dan Lambert. He's going to come into the promotion, and the story at the tapings is he's looking to end the Jarrett legacy in professional wrestling. Of course, we saw Dan Lambert on a lot of things. You've probably seen him around MMA stuff. Of course, he's got his own MMA gym that's super successful. But in addition to that, you've seen him in more recent years in AEW. But believe it or not, he was there way back when in GFW. Talk to us a little bit about how he came to be a part of the organization.
My original connection, and you'll do a better job than I do, but Dan's, I can't say, yeah, one of his passions, I'll just say one of his passions. What I know, two of his passions. One is belt collecting. He is an old school, no, he's a
territory guy.
He's a territory wrestling fan. Boy, he knows his stuff in and out. I've got so much respect for that guy, his knowledge, his passion for it, but also America's top team. It's an MMA team, and they kick ass. They've got a lot of fighters that are out there in MMA world, not just UFC, all different brands, all different promotions. But Bobby Lashley is the one who first introduced me. I went down to Florida and met with Dan and everything, but he's just, what a cool guy, what a respectful guy. But when you start having conversations with Dan, I quickly caught on that he's watched more than his fair share of professional wrestling. And not only that, he has the gift of gab, he has a personality. And when I saw him on AEW, I like to sit back and go, yep, I think we're the first ones to put the old man on TV. No, he's super cool, but he's got conviction. And when he turns it on with a promo, with this promo, Conrad, do you know anybody that's any better that has so lack of
experience?
Yeah, he
is the real life version of a Jim Cornette or a Paul Heyman who can just cut a promo and there you go. But it's because he's been a sales leader and ran a sales force and been a business leader and built businesses, and he has a passion for it. And so, the balls it takes to be an entrepreneur, he's got, and the balls you have to be a sales leader and AKA be a public speaker and put yourself out there and not be risk averse, he's got.
Yep.
So then it's just, hey, let's go have some fun. I get to be passionate about something and have some fun and not have to shuffle papers today and play grab ass with something I grew up. He was fantastic at it and still is.
Yes. But anyway, it was cool having him apart. He was so amazing. You know who he brought to a couple of the tapings?
I know he brought Masvidal to AEW.
He brought Colby Covington as a young up and comer.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Well, he had right after Masvidal won the bad motherfucker belt in the UFC, the BMF belt. He was just hanging out backstage in Jacksonville at an AEW event. And I was like, hey, y'all are going to put him on camera, right?
Yeah.
I shouldn't be saying all this, but we'll move on. Hey, you've done a lot of interesting things in the business, like the old bus trips for World Class. That was difficult. And then, making all the towns in a dying territory of Memphis, and then working for the WWF when that road schedule was crazy and the payoffs were minuscule because the business is in a down, nearly losing it all. Thankfully, you meet Richard Scrushy. Oh, he's indicted. Thankfully, we meet Dixie Carter, but just all the ups and downs. But man, these marathon tapings, 24 hours of content in 6 days, back to back to back to back to back to back. Not just you as a performer, but you're juggling and trying to get your arms around every piece of this, the creative, the production, and the talent. And you're in, for lack of a better word, active addiction.
Oh,
one of the worst weeks of your life, maybe most stressful.
You know what, Conrad, and this is I won't dive into it today, too deep into today, but a lot of folks call the disease of addiction the disease of isolation. And, you can be alone in a room of 10,000, that kind of deal. I knew producing this, and I've talked at length about this to others, like, why were you feeling this way and all that kind of, therapeutic stuff. I knew when we were producing it, we were headed south and not north. I absolutely knew. You put on a good face and smile and this and that. And, all right, let's go to work. Rah, 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 rah. Conrad, I just knew it. And I had voiced it. Yes, I had voiced it long before in Nashville, in Toronto, in Mexico, at the business table, at lunches. Guys, it doesn't work. We're creating content on a Tuesday or Wednesday that won't air for 4 or 5 weeks. That's it's very, very hard in this all that. I knew it wouldn't work. So Conrad, the stress level of all of it, and this ain't an excuse. I'm just saying, you ask this, the professional stress level that I turned into personal stress level was, yes, at a very, probably an all-time high. And that's including the Scroochie days.
We know how hard it must have been. And if the only way I could think it might've been harder is with a little help from Blue Chew. It's going to be so hard. Even a cat couldn't scratch it. Going to get you the same active ingredients as Viagra, Cialis, and Levitra, but in chewable form and at a fraction of the cost. Can Blue Chew get your ding dong real hard? Yeah. Do you sometimes wish that you had a little boost to give you that 5-star performance? I'm not saying you necessarily have a problem, but maybe you want to feel like you're 17 again and maybe go Iron Man, do a little Broadway. Well, grab that little rascal, look him in the eye and say, let me talk to you, and chew up that Blue Chew. Be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers. And once you're approved, you get your prescription within a few days. And here's the best part. It's all done online. No visits to the doctor's office, no awkward conversation, no waiting in line at the pharmacy. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA, prepared and shipped directly to your door in a discreet package. But there won't be anything discreet about your package. Blue Chew wants to help you have better sex. Discover your options at bluechew.com. Chew it and do it. And boy, do we have a special deal for our listeners. Try Blue Chew free when you use our promo code MyWorld at checkout. Just pay $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. The promo code is MyWorld to receive your first month free. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. We want to thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. GFW makes a deal with Pop TV. They're going to stay on until 2018. Were you involved in those negotiations or discussions, or you just find out after the fact?
And this was kind of a re-up. We went out there and met with them. Grateful for having exposure in so many ways. Obviously not an ideal contract, by any stretch. It wasn't Spike, it wasn't Destination America, but Brad, what's his name? Brad, oh my gosh. He was the GM at Pop, smart guy, young guy. I knew it was an opportunity.
Brad Schwartz,
goodness. Thank you. Is a joint venture. I knew there was upside.
Do you know what Brad Schwartz is up to these days?
Yeah, because he moved from one place to another. What is he? Because I try to follow him.
The entertainment president for the CW network. How about that shit? I can see you sticking it in your pipe. I can see you smoking it.
As Paul Harvey used to say.
And there's the rest of the story.
Bingo. I knew I was Brad for a reason. Anyway, he was a cool dude, smart. He got it. He was dealing with budgets just like I was. The real realities of Pop TV. What can they pay per hour?
Well, we know that the reality is CW now has wrestling. Once again, Brad Schwartz has an appetite for wrestling. This was right underneath the nose of a lot of folks. They started to figure it out. And then ta-dow, lots of rumor and innuendo about what's going on with that. Of course, we know the announcement was made just last week, since you and I recorded last, that CW is now going to be the new home for NXT. So people you and I know were working behind the scenes for the better part of a year or more on bringing that to reality, a new wrestling promotion on CW, and it didn't work out. And the rumor was that Corgan had thrown his hat in the ring. I think Mike Johnson appeared on Eric Bischoff's show, Strictly Business with John Alba last week.
He did.
And they talked about the fact that allegedly the whole NWA has two shows thing was not exactly the case. That perhaps Corgan was self-funding a reality show about his life, which would include music and in the backdrop, the NWA. Now, Corgan has come out and said that there's lots of rumors and bad information and speculation that he can't comment on, but what he said is true. He has a deal with a top 20 cable network for 2 programs. And now everybody wants to know what's next. And of course, a lot of people are wagging their finger and saying, oh, it's the cocaine spot. And other people are saying, no, that had nothing to do with it. That was never an opportunity, blah, blah, blah. But it is interesting to see and hear how it all came together again. That the person who was interested in putting Impact TV on Pop TV, which by the way, used to be your channel guide TV. And now they're trying to get into new creative content. They had up Schitt's Creek and all that stuff. And now Impact Wrestling or Global Force Wrestling, all these years later, he's running entertainment for CW, and here comes the WWE. Man, WWE, old Nick Khan, he's got the golden touch right now, doesn't he?
It's great for wrestling. End of story. What was Brad's stop right before CW? Do you have that? I don't know.
Let me find it.
But as you're finding that, just again, and we often give the professional wrestling business their flowers.
Real quick, he was the SVP of programming and operations for the Madison Square Garden Company for a couple of years. And then he ran for more than 7 years. He was the president of Pop Media Group that wound up in 2020. He worked for the CW as an advisor for a year and a month. And then he's been working on the Capra project, but he's been with the CW here for a minute.
Okay.
So,
I was trying to drill back. We had a couple of meetings. I sat right beside him in a couple of, anyway, hate to say it, not all Hollywood or television folks, quote unquote, get it. And I say, get wrestling, buddy. He got it. He got more about it than I did probably. No.
And he got WWE. So good for him.
Yeah. And think about that, old Connie. You just kind of look around the globe. And we often kind of talk about this, but TBS, TNT, USA Network, NBC, Peacock. I mean, on and on and on. The business is healthy. If you produce compelling content, there's a home for it. Period.
It's just interesting to me that, because he sort of took over there for the CW based on LinkedIn in November of 2022. And as I mentioned, he was an advisor before that, but still, for him to have one of the big seats since November of 2022, knowing that he had once upon a time been the guy who helped greenlight Impact on Pop, that was a real opportunity. So kudos to all involved who sniffed that out and were working on it. And shout out to WWE, man. They got the hot hand right now. Let's talk about where things start to come off the wheels. Here comes the uncomfortable part of the conversation, I suppose.
Conrad, all due respect, all 4 wheels at this time
we're already off.
They were on, but they were, you see the old pickup truck down in Alabama going down. Yep. You're like, that boy he'll tell you, I can't get up on the main highway.
Yes. I'm familiar with that. So listen, Triplemania, I think everybody listening to this knows, is sort of, if New Japan has Wrestle Kingdom, and if Impact has Bound for Glory, and if WWE has WrestleMania, well, AAA has Triplemania. And it's the 25th edition of Triplemania, so it's a big show. And there are apparently a ton of issues. Sexy Star is going to defeat a couple of ladies in a 4-way dance, including one who wrestles for GFW named Rosemary. And as the story goes, Sexy Star is going to be performing an arm bar for the finish on Rosemary. And it's not what you might call a working arm bar. And Dave Meltzer writes this. There was also an argument with Vampiro backstage that night, since the few people who were ahead of time were talking about it after Ed and Jarrett had gotten back from Mexico. There was another incident, although one could argue Jeff was in the right, where he got into a confrontation with Johnny Gonzalez, superstar boxer in Mexico who held 4 world titles and is married to Sexy Star. It was when Jarrett was telling Sexy Star that she was out of line and needed to apologize, and Gonzalez, who was not a big guy, a champion at featherweight and bantamweight, got in Jarrett's face and defended his wife. I'm not sure if Jarrett knew who he was at first, but at one point he did know, and they were face to face, and Jarrett told him he didn't give a shit who he was. She was out of line and needed to apologize. So first of all, when I read that, and I don't know what's true or not true, we're going to talk about it. I love that so much because our pal Mark Mero tells a great story about how when Sable Star was on the rise and he was sitting at home and their relationship was on again, off again, and clearly on the rocks, he sort of put it out there into the universe. I'm going to find out who this guy is that Rena, my wife, is hanging out with, and I'm going to kick his fucking ass. And he found out it was Brock Lesnar, and he learned the power of forgiveness. And when you find out, hey, this guy I'm shouting at, his wife, and he's a smaller fellow, but he popped up. Oh, he's a 4-time boxing champion? I don't give a shit who you are. I just thought that was the most Jeff Jarrett, good old country boy. I know you're not in your right mind, but I just love that old tipsy Jeff don't give a damn. Right is right. And by God, we're going to sort it out right now. I know this is an ugly situation, probably one of your more embarrassing situations.
Oh, for
but
sure.
that part, that makes me happy.
Why is it? Oh, I know.
The Observer would continue. There were all kinds of issues regarding AAA and GFW, largely based on the disorganization of the event. The GFW talent were never picked up and brought to a press conference. There were a lot of questions regarding Jeff Jarrett's performance. However, Borash is scheduled to be representing GFW at the next several AAA tapings in Mexico. So there's no indication at all of what happened last week is going to lead to the relationship between the two sides ending. There was talk about Jarrett's condition in the completely disorganized Rumble type match. The announcers who did the show noted they had no format. People backstage involved in running and shooting the show noted they had no format. There's lots of fingers wagging on the outside of this. What do you remember about what happened with Rosemary, with Sexy Star and her husband, with Vampiro? Just carry me through the whole shooting match.
All right, pal. And I think we've talked a little bit on this, but here's obviously in my deepest, darkest days, not an excuse. That was my reality of addiction. And we were asked to go down, and I say we, the group, Bobby Lashley, and I'm going to bring him into the story here in a minute, but the GFW, the Impact, the TNA group were to go down there. Show, was that a Sunday? Yeah, we were asked to leave on a Friday. Saturday was supposed to be rehearsals. It was very disorganized. Here's a big footnote. Man, I'm congested here. A big footnote out of all of this is AAA without Konnan. I'll just say that is diplomatically. Konnan is a talent, great promo, podcaster, all of it. But at the end of the day, he is an executive producer and takes full responsibility and knows that he has to cover talent, he has to cover creative, he has to cover production. He also has to be a babysitter. He has to do the ins and outs. He has to make sure his talents get to a press conference. I mean, A to Z. And there was disorganized, isn't even doing it. That's to say the least. The entire mess. I'm talking about rides from the airport, all of that. And look, it was just a complete mess. Vampiro was booking the show, but you can't put it all on him. Ultimately, it rests on Dorian's shoulders. It was just very, very unorganized. We got over at the building the day before for rehearsals and sat around for not like an hour, like 6 and 7 and 8 all day, and did nothing with no food. Like a good alcoholic I was at the time. Of course, you get your liquor over there and bring it. But Connie, that was kind of the day before, and then you get to the day of the show. I was in whatever it was, that battle royal with a bunch of entrances. It was a mess, but I'll never forget getting into the Rosemary story. In that, yes, it's embarrassing for me, but I've worked through it. I apologize to Dorian. I took my responsibility for all of it, but I'll never forget watching the Rosemary match backstage on a monitor in our dressing room. And look, I don't think you're ever going to profess me to be a MMA or a submission specialist or anything that goes down the road of
Well,
a
I
show.
got photos that say otherwise. You
I know.
used to teach MMA.
But anyhow, I looked at Bobby Lashley and I said, that ain't right. And Bobby raised his voice and said, F no, it ain't right. I'm like, what the hell is going on? I'm like, what? So I did my double checking just to make sure. I'm like, she's cranking on that thing and cranking on that thing and cranking on that thing. And it ain't working. You can just kind of tell. And I, again, look back at Bobby just to make sure. Bobby, he goes, no, it ain't good. And that's kind of what started it. And she was very disrespectful.
Sexy star.
Yes, my bad, sexy star. And I felt as a representative, and look, I put the undue pressure on myself. Here's Ed going, they're really going to hurt one of our talent. Nobody's going to say anything. And I knew damn well Dorian wouldn't say a word, not a word. And I knew Vamp wouldn't either. So,
no, wait, why do you say that?
they just want, that's how they and let me say this, they wouldn't and they didn't. It's just, oh, that's just the culture, that if you don't stick up for yourself, they're going to run right over you. And they attempted to, and that's kind of where I'm like, hey, this ain't cool. Rosemary, it was a mess.
That's the culture in AAA, or that's the culture in Lucha?
It was the culture in AAA at the time. I can't say it all in Lucha.
Wow.
It was. I mean, it happened, and everybody just kind of looked at each other like, oh, it's all right. No, it's not all right. We're in a business that's working. And look, I get the boxer boyfriend was taken up for his wife, but he's not in our industry. And it could have been,
you don't give a shit who he is.
Well, it could have been solved if there would have been just a little bit of, hey, let's talk about this, but it wasn't.
So you're yelling at Vampiro because you felt like he should have stepped in and said something?
Yes, he was the boss backstage, 100% the boss. Now that's, you really look at it, Dorian could and should have stepped in, but ultimately in this scenario, Vamp just looked the other way and did nothing, which, to pour gasoline in the whole situation, I'd sit around the whole day before, and then the battle roll or all that kind of stuff. It was just a disorganized, no thought process put into it. It was a mess of a show, and I absolutely did my part in making that mess.
To be clear, you told the story before. You were drinking.
Yep.
And
a lot.
Before, during, and after the show.
Yep.
And so you're an unhinged, for lack of a better word, maniac backstage. And this is probably the first time Ed gets to see that, right?
Correct. Yes, unhinged, yes. I'll say this is August. From January to August, we did our fair share of
fellowshipping.
Well said.
But now this is different. This is pissed off Jeff.
Yeah, yes.
This is pissed off and little tipsy Jeff. And so now that's actual gasoline on the fire. How does he respond when you sort of let it rip, Tater Chip?
He may have a bit different recollection, and I mean that. I think for the most part, just steered clear.
Yeah.
For the moment, steered clear. For the moment.
Because you're probably not able to have a rational conversation at that point.
I would assume that to be true.
Yeah. Was the Queen with you for all of this?
No.
Okay. So the original plan
at home, at this time, I got kids 20 to 10, 4 of them at home. It was a tough time.
on
And
the
I say
flight
that,
home.
you can imagine at these dark days, what she's going through, what Karen's going through.
Hell.
That's what I'm saying. On all avenues. Jeff, you need to get help. Hey, kids, Dad's going to be okay. Hey, business, because she was working with Ed. Hey, Ed. Hey, whoever. Hey, we need to help.
Hey, stuff at the house. Hey, bills. Hey, kids. Hey, boss. Hey, I mean, she's behind you with a mop and a broom every day.
Bingo. There you go. Well said.
The original plan, according to PW Insider, is they were going to set up you versus Alberto at Bound for Glory, and the story was going to start at Triplemania. Quote, this is from the Observer. The original version was that Jarrett would be teased against Alberto, trying to build an angle around Alberto's suspension where he blamed Jarrett for suspending him. In the original version, it would be a big swerve where everyone would think Jarrett would wrestle, only to have it changed the night of the show to Rey Mysterio Jr. However, that fell through, and negotiations with GFW and Mysterio are no longer taking place because he's heavily involved with the crash. It's Conan. And there have been too many issues between the two sides as of late, and some dating back several months. Among those issues was the crash heavily promoting Lashley and getting all his papers in order for a show in Tijuana, only to have Impact at the last minute replace him with James Storm. Another of which was that Jarrett had agreed to lose his hair to Mysterio at a big show in Tijuana later this year, and after shooting the angle the next day with no warning, Jarrett announced a AAA deal with Impact and ended up working Triplemania. So, a lot to unpack here. Were you ever in serious discussions, as best you can recall, to have a hair match with Rey Mysterio, hair versus mask, I suppose?
If you remember, in 2018, I went through with it with AAA. But yes, I was. That would have been with Crash,
right?
But this one would have been a Crash. I ended up doing it with AAA. But yes, if you just back all the way out of this story, I wanted Rey Mysterio a part of our Bound for Glory.
That's right.
That was all the discussion.
Was the original idea when you're doing all this Triplemania business, you and Del Rio still bringing him back, even though he was suspended and all that?
I mean, at that time, Del Rio was still working through legal issues. Was it going to be clear? Was it not going to be clear? That might have been on the table, but far from a done deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the show happened on August 26, 2017. And on September 5th, GFW releases a statement that you're taking an indefinite leave of absence. So we're talking like 10 days later. The Observer would write, it was clear that the decision was not something he knew about in advance because he sent out a tweet that morning talking about going back into the office to start a day of work. And that day was scheduled to host a party for the company staff at his home, which ended up being canceled. How did all this come down? I know that there's been a lot written about it, been a lot said about it, but I assume you guys fly home from Mexico. When I say you guys, I mean you and Ed. Are y'all on the same flight? Are y'all talking? Or you just show up to the airport? We're going different places. So see you later.
Remember, as far as kind of doubt, he probably went back to Toronto. So my guess is no, but I don't remember that particular. I just remember kind of getting home. Obviously a complete mess. Nobody happy with me anywhere in my life. And I want to say it was maybe 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. Hey, Jeff, we're going to meet at the office on, so that would have been that date, maybe that whatever date that the announcement was made. And me and Ed met, and it was, Jeff, you need to go get your life in order. And we'll revisit all of this. So in their defense, when you are in the middle of, and papers, some signed, not, and I think the formalities of some not signed, So it was literally right in the middle of the deal, but all the deal points, and again, I don't want to rehash all the litigated stuff, but we had agreed on everything, but there were still some formalities and some IP exchanges as far as the rights. And it was a mess that I made so messy, Conrad, but, Ed, they gave me an opportunity, to go get my life in order, was the reality. And so that was kind of the pill that I swallowed. I knew it, as I look at it today, I didn't know how sick I was, but I knew, okay, that's what that disease does. Okay, I got an issue. I need to go fix this. But that's just, lack of a better word, Conrad, let me just go put a Band-Aid on this, or let me just go get some sutures, or let me just go, fix things my way, if you will. And so my solution was 6 weeks of outpatient. That was, go ahead.
What was the party supposed to be about at your house with the staff?
So Labor Day weekend. And, and I'm assuming that those timelines, I think I came home from that because I think we met at the office the day after, but I think that party was canceled going into the weekend because of my screw up in Mexico. That Karen's like, no, we ain't getting a group out here and drink again.
I get it.
I think that was kind of the exact timeline.
Talk to me a little bit about how you felt in that meeting with Ed, where Ed's saying, hey, you need to go, fix yourself, and we'll table this and we'll discuss it later. Respectfully, you'd been hearing something like that from Karen for a while, and it was in one ear and out the other. How was your message from Ed delivered, or how did it land with you?
So he brought an attorney who had dealt with
this stuff before.
The situations. And on the one hand, they brought the hammer down. On the other hand, it's fixable. So I went from ashamed to angry to ashamed to angry to pessimistic to optimistic. And all right, I need to get myself removed from this equation. There is insanity going on here. It's what a good active alcoholic does. You kind of start blaming everybody but yourself, and point fingers at the budgets, and a list a mile long.
It's not me, it's this.
This is why I did this, and this is why I did that. But I tried to remove I cleaned my office out, and they were like, you don't have to do that. And I'm like, no, let's kind of do a complete reset here. I also had in the back of my mind that what are the real ulterior motives? I started thinking what is really going on here?
Okay. Let me time out right there. When you're saying ulterior motives,
they wanted me out because they don't want to spend the money that I wanted to spend.
Wrestling breeds paranoia. Would you agree with that?
For sure.
And you had been a part of this exact same company, granted different ownership, different set of players, but you had been on the other side of political maneuvering before. So when this comes down in your probably arrogant alcoholic brain at the time, you're thinking, oh, here's what they're really doing. It couldn't possibly be that you needed to do something different. It was, well, hey, they tried to break that girl's arm and nobody else was going to say shit. I'm going to be the man and say something and blah, blah, blah. So you had that approach, I'm sure, to all of this, right? It's at least in the back of your mind.
My mentality, I think, clear would be, I've hung myself. I gave him rope.
Okay. So now you're ashamed because you allowed this to happen. You created the circumstance where they could do this to you.
Yes.
I see. Well, the Observer would write, the big question not exactly answered regards the future of Jeff Jarrett. Jeff has gone to take care of personal issues, which are generally believed to be alcohol related. Time out right there. Do you want to tell everybody what a Double J used to be? Your go-to drink? What was it called? And what was it?
Rum and Dr. Pepper.
Rum and Dr. Pepper. This is a guy who now would not eat sugar for any amount of money. and he's just double dosing here. Nordham is talking about the subject, gave the impression that at some point Jarrett would be back. Karen Jarrett on Twitter positioned this as 100% positive for GFW and for Jeff, and thanked Ed for giving Jeff the time he needs. Obviously, Jeff had no idea this was coming, but there were people in the company who were expecting this and pretty much aware of it after Triplemania. I know you're not thrilled with this, but you had a lot of people who cared about you and were trying to push you into the right direction. And well, the Observer says this: Jeff Jarrett was in the news over the weekend, but I can also tell you that we heard that Jarrett was gone before this happened. Most felt he wasn't coming back when they dropped using the GFW name. Jeff was supposed to work shows in Calgary and Edmonton for Real Canadian Wrestling. Jeff told people he was held up at customs at the airport for 3 hours on October 20th and told he had to fly back the next morning, which would mean he would be missing Edmonton. When he got to the show the first night, he told the promotion that somebody tipped off customs and they held him. That isn't that unusual for wrestlers or people affiliated with shows to get held for a while, but usually it's an hour. The first time UFC came to Montreal, Stitch Duran, the famous cut man, and myself were both held for about an hour, and they went through everything, and a ton of people who said they were coming in for UFC was held as fear of violence for some reason. But I'm told it was very unusual for someone to be held for 3 hours. Jarrett showed up in Calgary, and the story was he started drinking vodka, polishing off a few bottles, and passed out backstage and was in no condition to perform. He woke up and still wrestled at the show. Of course he did. When his music played and he didn't come out, his opponent actually said Jarrett was upstairs getting drunk. He did the match, which had a ton of stalling, and at one point Jarrett lost his balance on a body slam spot. There were some Lance Storm students there, so Jarrett got the idea of doing an angle where some heels jumped him and Storm students would save him. He cut a promo after about how he and Storm were tight to make sense of it. He was tight with the Hart family. Storm wasn't even at the show, and the fans didn't know Storm students. Jarrett told the promotion he'd be missing Edmonton, and the promotion sent out a release stating that. However, the promotion claims they called Customs to discuss what happened, and Customs told them they had no clue about that story and claimed that Jarrett changed the flights on his own to go home early. I don't know what happened, what didn't happen. What do you remember about what happened in Canada?
So, Conrad, I just referenced outpatient for 6 weeks.
Yeah.
I finished that on a Tuesday, and Friday got on a plane to go to Edmonton. Calgary and Edmonton. Went from here to Minneapolis. No big deal. There was supposed to be maybe a 90-minute delay. Ended up being like a 3.5 minute delay. Worked in the Delta Lounge. I was just in that Delta Lounge not long ago. No big deal. Didn't think about alcohol. Got on the plane. They rushed to board us. As I recall this, as I've been taught treatment, never forget your last drunk. Ever. Know every detail. Conrad, I could do hour discussion on this, but we won't. But as the stewardess came by, Mr. Jarrett, can I get you anything to drink? I responded, ordered my drink, and drank from Minneapolis to Calgary, landed, and did go through customs. That's why I'd never read that till research today, that the promoter called, and I'm sure they did, and called the customs, but I remember specifically going through customs, and the guy goes, "Why are you you're telling me you're going to Edmonton?" I'm like, "Yep, work there tomorrow night." And he says, "Well, you don't have any record." We went back and forth, and I'd been drinking, but he said, "You go and work your show tonight, but you come back here." And he says, "I'm working in the morning as well. I want to see you here at the airport at 5:30. And I said, "I can't make the other shot." And he goes, "No." He said, "You do your shot here today because I can't get you out of the airport. You don't need to be waiting around here all day. But I'm telling you, you be back here tomorrow or you're going to be in big trouble." And I'm like, okay. But in my mind, that just gave me kind of as crazy as it may be. All right, I'm not going to Edmonton. My buddy picked me up. We went to a restaurant. I went to a liquor store, went to the show, kind of all that mess. And I got dropped off back at the airport at midnight. Maybe a little bit after that, maybe 1 o'clock. It was snowy that night. and sat in the terminal of the airport for going through customs, and that was the beginning of the end. That was on a Friday. Saturday morning, went into treatment that following Tuesday. I could go into much greater detail, but it was a complete mess. No alcohol in my system for the better part of 6 weeks, and then went off the deep end. And that is really, as I look back, the absolute proof maybe that I needed to understand the disease, because I had zero power once that first drink went down. I mean, zero.
The promoter's name here in Canada is Steven.
Yep.
And he says that he's going to claim that Abyss is being offered to them as a make good by Impact. So shout out for him putting on the Burrow jersey and coming in.
And Scott was involved. You know, they had to clean, like you said about Karen, they had to clean up my mess, and it was a real mess. And I hate it. It's you know, that this is the valley. I mean, this is the valley of the valley of the valley. And Conrad, I won't cry today because you've got me there. But when I really look back on it, from that Minneapolis Delta lounge of zero alcohol to getting on that plane, in that blink of an eye, my life changed forever. Didn't know it at the time, but had I not stepped off that cliff and gone into that valley for the next 4 days, and look, you were involved, Bruce was involved, Brian James. I obviously can't thank him enough. So many people. Goes without saying, Karen and the treatment, all that kind of stuff. But had I not walked into that dark valley, I don't think I'd be alive today.
Meltzer would say that he had the impression that Impact had cut ties with you a long time back. He wasn't sure that this booking in Canada was even through Impact, but maybe it was done before Bound for Glory. Meltzer would say one close friend of Jeff's is saying that he's in denial and claims he's doing fine. Quote, later he came to grips that he had a problem and checked into rehab on 10/25 after Karen Jarrett had worked with WWE officials in setting it up. After the announcement, he was gone and they weren't using the GFW initials. Jarrett claimed Anthem was out of money. Anthem claimed that wasn't the case since they're doing the pay-per-view and subsequent tapings. Anthem is trying to heavily cut back on expenses, but the promotion is losing a ton of money, and that makes it precarious long-term. So a lot to unpack here. I do want to ask, you know, you said you couldn't thank Brian James enough. It says in the Observer that you worked with a WWE official. I assume it was Brian who helped get you into treatment.
That was Karen to Brian, and then Brian, we'll say, worked his magic internally at WWE.
I got you.
Yeah.
What was the difference between outpatient and inpatient? I mean, I know one is you stay there, and one is you just go there during the day and then come home at night. I'm just wondering, like, what was it about the inpatient approach that worked for you that outpatient didn't work? Or do you think it was the timing of you tried outpatient, had this relapse, and then you realized, oh shit, I really do have a problem?
I think, you know, that's at the end of the day, you got to be ready.
Yeah.
You know, people say that, and it's hard for others to really understand. You got to be ready. And what does that mean? Well, you really got to hit a bottom. But the real math of it, the logic of it, outpatients, 4 hours tops, 3.5 to 4 hours a day versus 24 hours a day. Because when I left outpatient every day, I mentally went on with my life, but wasn't treating my disease. And when you go into treatment and you really, really learn about it, and I mean, it's multiple sides. It's more than getting physically sober. You've got to get mentally sober. You got to get emotionally sober. And most importantly, you got to get spiritual sobriety to really pull back the onion, the layers of the onion. Geez, I'm stopped up. That old tooth, pal.
Hey, let me ask, you know, because I know we're going way over time here, and I'm sorry about that, but this is a big part of your life, and I'm hoping we can entertain some wrestling stuff, but also help some people in the process. I'm curious, like when you look back at this, so you know that this saved your life and this was all a positive thing. And we're sitting here talking to you right now because of this process. So it all worked out the way it was supposed to. But along the way, there was some ugliness too with you and the Anthem folks. And we know that that became a legal issue a few years ago. And even in your sobriety, it was a legal issue. You know, if you had it to do over again, obviously you wish you wouldn't have maybe become quote unquote unhinged in Mexico. Maybe you wouldn't have been in active addiction and would have handled your time here in 2017 with Impact differently. But when you think back about when they said, don't clean your office out, but you still did. Do you regret that? Do you feel like that was you sort of giving up on them? Well, if you've given up on me, I give up on y'all sort of thing.
And I don't want to, well, we're talking sobriety. There is a promise in sobriety. You will not regret the past, nor wish to shut the door on it. I believe that. It was all part of my story. We can discuss it and talk about it and, you know, regret cleaning my office back. And then we could go back to, I wish I'd had a conversation, but prior to Slammiversary, when I really understood we're going to do 12 episodes in 6 days and then go into March. And then why didn't I listen to Karen and Hermie and others from day one? You know, Conrad, I could play the dominoes in reverse so far back.
I guess what I'm trying to get to is why did it get to a pissing contest with you and Anthem? Like, I understand how it could be contentious and there's hurt feelings when you're in active addiction because, you know, it's hard to apply logic and rational thought to an irrational situation.
Right.
But when you're back, Jeff, and you're lucid and you're Double J that we see here, you're the Last Outlaw and Roll Tide. There was still contention. I would think, if anything, them giving you the opportunity to go fix things would have been a good thing. But then ultimately, those plans changed. You didn't just come right back. What happened?
Help me understand that again. Are you talking about
when they said you're taking a leave of absence and you cleaned your office out? That feels like you're just going to go get your shit together and come back.
Yep.
And now
what happened?
Well, Canada, but I'm saying, is that it? Canada happens and they cut ties?
Oh, it was over. It was game, set, match.
So you got a phone call or you go into the office for that?
Oh, that was, remember, Friday, get home from Canada Saturday. It was the 4-day bender. Woke up, going to treatment, got to treatment. You know, all that goes with it. By that time, it was out of Ed's hands. It was in his attorney's hands, to my attorney's hands. It's over. We got to figure how we're going to unwind this. It was over on that. There was no patching up once Canada happened. They were done. And I got it. I totally understood it.
When you see that the GFW name isn't mentioned anymore and it's now just called Impact, is that on your radar or is it not even a priority at that point?
Not zero.
Yeah.
I mean, 3 days in, 4 days in, 5 days in, I got a real understanding. I'm fighting for my life. Yeah. Right.
I think the story of you and TNA is so fascinating. The way it was developed, the way you really built it from absolute scratch, the way, you know, it started to spiral and slip through your fingers and who helped you rescue it. And then how that same person maybe tried to politically maneuver you out. And then finally you find yourself on the way out and you build something new and then you're brought back in and it feels like you're home again. But in reality, you're fighting to save your own life. This is your story of TNA is like a movie. You know, oh, by the way, along the way, you became estranged with your dad and your childhood sweetheart and the mother of your children and your wife passes away. Like, how is this not a movie? Damn the Von Erichs. This is the movie. And there's a happy ending at the end. I mean, it comes down to you revealing you're the devil and winning the world title this weekend. Forum, high-fiving Magic Johnson, squeezing Jeannie Buss on the ass. Yeah, high five, man.
Good of wrestling, Jeannie Buss. How about
that? Listen, it's a weird, long, strange trip. Here you are 15 years after you first started Impact and it's over. You wouldn't have ever You couldn't script this if you wanted to. And I appreciate what you said about not looking back with regrets. But what do you think, if anything, is the biggest misconception about the end of your run with Impact?
Well, look, we've talked maybe too much, and I do apologize to some folks if they just don't want to hear it and they tune into my world to hear wrestling, all this. But the business, like Conrad, you know how sometimes I'm still guilty of this, but I try to over communicate. Conrad, the lack of communication, and I'm going to put a lot of it on them. I had no idea that the budgets were going to be so tight. I just didn't ask enough questions, and they didn't know what they were getting into. But you know, the misconceptions on there, it's all pretty out there in black and white, in everything that goes with it. But we touched on Pop TV at this time. The India deal was going on. There was so much potential, but I mean, none of it panned out. It did not pan out. But some misconceptions, Conrad. I'm not sure about that, but it brought me. I'm grateful for all of it. I am very grateful for 2017 in so many ways, personally and professionally.
We're grateful that you guys tuned in this week to My World. We're going to be back next week talking about Jeff's new run as AEW champion and how that's getting kicked off this weekend at AEWTIX.com. Be sure to go and somehow, if you can, maneuver a physical printed ticket so you can have Double J autograph it. It's going to be worth a lot of money when he goes on this historic run. I have it on good authority that he's going to beat Roman Reigns' streak with the AEW world title.
Yeah.
It's going to be great. By the way, next week we'll be back taking a look at 25 years ago, some more of your run from the WWF in 1998. We'll talk about how you got a shaved head and a brand new attitude, and the Blue Blazers going to get involved. We'll talk about you feuding with DX and Southern Justice, and here's Al Snow and Head and Deborah, and we're talking about wrestling Triple H over in England. Deborah's going to strip naked and so much more right here on My World. And we want your questions. Ask them right now over at My World Pod on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Jeff is really active on social media. He knows a thing or two about social media, despite what you've heard, at Real Jeff Jarrett. Love to have your interactions on social. Also want to tell you, we got some great new swag over at boxofgimmicks.com, including the new Skunk Hunt shirt, which is super fun. You can also support our YouTube. That's My World on YouTube.com. It's another thing to hear the show, but man, seeing the show with some of our visual aids, it's a whole new level. That's My World on YouTube.com. By the way, you hear some of the same sponsors week in, week out. That's because advertising here really works. If you're looking for men 25 to 54, we got them, and it can be very affordable for your product or service at advertisewithjarrett.com. Jeff, I'm excited, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what these Tennessee Volunteers do. I'm hoping they can pull the nose up. I'm excited about you winning the AEW World title this weekend. You're going to stack Jay White and JF on top of each other and just strut all the way to the bank. Or maybe, you know what? Just go on up to the box office, take your pea shooter, and get paid in cash that night.
Let's do it, pal. I'm excited. Exciting week. Head out to LA tomorrow or today as you're listening to this. So, Conrad, it's always enjoyable. You know, this episode, I wasn't really sure what to think about it. I'm using your words, but we've pieced together 2017. That's why they call you the Podfather. So thank you.
I just think, you know, in the story of your life, 2002 and 2017 are two of the most important years by far. You know, starting the company, and then what you could, from the outside looking in, say, oh, when you finished up with the company. No, when you restarted your life, you hit Control Alt Delete on life. Yeah. And I think your story, if we're honest, because I know that there's a lot of people who still don't listen to the podcast. Oh, I hate Jeff Jarrett. All right, that's the character. When you really take a look at the person, the human being, your story is one of perseverance and persistence. And it's a great success story. And think about all the times you've been down and counted out, and how many times you got back up and you somehow climbed that mountain again. I mean, who would have predicted when we first sat down and recorded our very first podcast that you were going to be the AEW champion this weekend? Nobody had that on their bingo cards.
Not on episode 1 or episode 132, which we're on today. Connie,
But,
thank you, pal.
Well,
You can't be late today.
I'm sorry you're late, but you know what? You're the champ. They can wait. We'll see you next week right here on My World.
Peace.